For the fourth time trying to save the tragic male lead, I still failed to change the ending where he gives up his life for the female protagonist. After forcing a smile through the main couple's wedding, he resolutely took a knife and lay down in the bathtub. By the time I rushed home, blood had already spread across the floor. Lin Chushur lifted his head from the pool of blood and gave me a heartbreaking smile. Wan got married, this time. I really can't go on, but seeing her so happy. I'm so glad for her. Watching his face rapidly paling, my eyes reddened, my voice trembling. What about me? Hearing this, he gently closed his eyes and, with a sigh, left his final words. It's me. I'm sorry. The pregnancy test slip fell from my hand. He doesn't know I've heard those words 4 times already, but this time is different. This time, I'm pregnant. Just last night, he was still caressing my belly, gently kissing my ear. Darling, do you think our baby will be a boy or a girl? It's a shame that question will never be answered. Amidst the system's alarms, my world was reset once more. When I opened my eyes again, 18-year-old Lin Chushur was being cornered in the familiar alleyway. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, and his gaze cut through the crowd, locking directly onto mine. The young man leaned quietly against the wall, his school uniform faded from washing, fresh wounds marking his face. A bunch of thugs with garishly dyed hair had him surrounded, shoving him and hurling insults. He didn't fight back or shield himself, his gaze fixed firmly on where I stood. I'd seen this scene play out too many times before. Every single time, I'd rush over without a second thought, step in front of him, yell at those punks, and shield Lin Chushur. But this time, my feet were rooted to the spot, because in my past life, I had accidentally seen his diary. It turned out that throughout this entire ordeal of bullying, what he had been hoping for from the start was for the female lead to pull him out of the mire, not for someone like me to barge in. He truly is the gentlest supporting male character in the novel, born for the sole purpose of protecting the female lead. Even this affection from his youth was hidden away with the utmost care, leaving no trace. The system in my mind kept blaring alarms, urging me to act. I took a deep breath and finally took that first step. The thugs noticed me and sneered. A guy with dyed yellow hair curled his lip and said, Well, look who's back. The pathetic lapdog. Another chimed in, What, you think you're some kind of hero? I ignored them, walked straight over to Lin Chushur, and crouched down in front of him. He looked up at me, his eyes holding no surprise, only understanding and resignation. It seemed he had long anticipated my arrival. I reached my hand out in his direction, then I picked up the pancake that had fallen in front of him and dusted it off. Phew, it's not dirty, I muttered under my breath before taking a bite. The flatbread was still warm, and I'd made a point of adding the fried egg and lettuce for him first thing in the morning. Since he always skipped breakfast, I made a habit of bringing him something different to eat each day. Chewing on the flatbread, I looked up at the thugs and mumbled, My mistake. Wrong person, don't let me stop you. In an instant, the entire alley fell silent, leaving only the sound of my chewing. Lin Chushur froze, his usually gentle eyes revealing a look of bewilderment for the first time. His face turned pale, he pursed his lips and turned his face away. I ignored him, munching on the pancake as I stepped past him. Lin Chushur slipped into the classroom just as the bell rang, his clothes already soaked through. He glanced at me, his lips parting as if he wanted to say something. I avoided his gaze, raising my book like a shield between us as my thoughts drifted far away. Back when I first received the system task, I didn't hesitate to choose what seemed like the simplest one, redeem the gentle male supporting character. I naively thought that redeeming someone who appeared gentle and kind wouldn't be too difficult. The first time, I approached him as a friend. I shielded him from his father's drunken abuse, covered his mother's medical bills, and stood by him through his lowest moments. Watching him gradually become a renowned scientist, on the eve of his award ceremony, as I proudly brought him flowers, I received an invitation to his funeral. His last words to me were I'm sorry, but for the heroine Lin Wan. He left a 3-page letter. The letter not only offered congratulations on her wedding but also detailed plans for annual birthday gifts, and even included presents for her future child's first-month celebration. The second time, following the system's suggestion, I chose to take our relationship a step further. Lin Chushur is a wonderful partner. He would come to pick me up the moment it started raining, instinctively tilting the umbrella towards me. Even if it meant he got soaked to the skin, he would run out in the middle of the night during my period to buy me the dessert I was craving. Tolerating all my unreasonable whims, he would also watch me sleep in the morning, prop his head up and smile at me, then gently kiss my forehead. I became utterly and helplessly immersed in love for him and accepted his proposal. On our wedding day, my heart was full of joy for the future. When I awoke, The person holding me had already become a cold corpse. He clutched the empty pill bottle, pills scattered across the floor. The phone screen was still lit, showing his recent like on Lin Wanwan's moments post flaunting her marriage certificate. I unlocked the phone and found dozens of unsent messages in the drafts, all wishing Lin Wanwan happiness. The third time, the fourth time, it's always the same. One moment, he was texting me, "Honey, what would you like for dinner tonight?" The next moment, by the time I rushed home, he had already jumped from the rooftop. Until this time, just the night before, he had kissed my belly and we were making plans for our future. I had already begun drafting my application to stay in this world for the rest of my life. But after watching the main couple walk towards their own happy ending, as if he had finally fulfilled some mission, he took his own life once more. Upon seeing the overwhelming crimson in the bathroom, the world I had been desperately holding together completely collapsed. I'd done everything in my power to stand by him at every turn where the heroine might set him off, guarding him down to the smallest detail, yet, it's always beyond my reach. I've finally come to realize that the gentle, sorrowful male supporting character who forever lingers in the heroine's shadow in stories is beyond anyone's redemption. This time, I'm truly spent. I can't save him, and I don't want to try anymore. I submitted my request to abandon the mission overnight. The system went to the higher-ups with a sigh to get the approval process started. 3. The bell rang for the end of class. The homeroom teacher stood at the podium and announced a seat reshuffle, telling everyone to choose their new spots in order. When it was Lin Wanwan's turn, her gaze shifted back and forth between Lin Chushur and Gu Chen. Lin Chushur kept watching her, his fingers unconsciously clutching the hem of his shirt. "I choose Gu Chen," Lin Wanwan said softly. Lin Chushi's hand, poised to pull out a chair, froze mid-air. He lowered his head, his shoulders slumping slightly, unable to hide his dejection. This scene was all too familiar to me. In the past, I would have immediately walked over and declared loudly, "I choose Lin Chushur," hoping to protect his pride in this way. But this time, I glanced at the empty seat next to Zhou Yi, the school bully, and walked straight over to sit down. Zhou Yi was catching up on sleep with his head on the desk. The sound of me pulling out the chair woke him, and he shot me an annoyed glare. "What's all the racket?" I ignored him and went about organizing my books. In the corner of his eye, Lin Chushur sat alone by the window, the seat beside him still empty, looking sad and lonely. After the bell rang for the end of class, Lin Chushur walked over to my desk. "Wen Yan, how are you?" He had just begun to speak when Zhou Yi came rushing over in a flurry. "Wen Yan, let me copy your math homework, quick," Zhou Yi blurted out urgently, already reaching for my notebook. Lin Chushur suddenly stepped between us. A flicker of displeasure crossed his usually gentle face. He shoved his own notebook at Zhou Yi. "Use mine." Zhou Yi paused for a moment, took the notebook, muttered thanks, and slumped back over the desk to start copying. The moment the lunch bell rang, all the students rushed to the cafeteria. Lin Chushur stood still, his gaze following me the whole time. I knew exactly what he was waiting for. In the past, when it was time to eat, I would always take out 2 lunch boxes on cue and hand one of them to him. His mother is seriously ill and bedridden, yet he still has to work after school to support the family. In the past, it was that pitiful look of his that got to me every time, making me relent again and again. But this time, I walked straight up to Zhou Yi and said, "Didn't you say you were going to treat me to a meal?" Zhou Yi scratched his head, almost forgot. "Let's go. There's a new stall in the cafeteria." I followed Zhou Yi out of the classroom, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lin Chushur standing there, eyes red and looking utterly lost. The next day at noon, he was still waiting for me. When I ignored him again and walked straight out of the classroom, he softly called my name, Wen Yan. I paid him no mind, grabbing my good friend from the class next door and rushing off to the cafeteria in a hurry. On the third day, he finally took the initiative to walk over. "Let's go get something to eat," he said softly, his tone tentative. I raised an eyebrow and was just about to speak when Lin Wanwan suddenly rushed in from outside the door. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly been crying. Lin Chushi's expression instantly turned anxious. "What's wrong, Wanwan?" "Gu Chen. He promised to go to the library with me, but he went to play basketball instead," Lin Wanwan said between sobs. "Don't be upset. Gu Chen probably just forgot," Lin Chushur said hurriedly, handing her a tissue, her voice dripping with tenderness. "But this is already the third time. How about I go to the library with you? I have some books to return anyway." They were talking back and forth, completely ignoring me as if I were thin air. I tactfully slipped out of the room, quietly closing the door behind me. 4. The last class outing before the college entrance exams was a barbecue in the countryside. I was dead set on not going, but Zhou Yi From morning reading all the way through break time, kept pestering me like a broken record. It's the last group activity, do me this favor, will you? In the end, he annoyed me so much I had no choice but to get on the bus. The train car was noisy and bustling, and I hadn't even noticed when Lin Chusher slipped into the empty seat beside me. His face was flushed with an unnatural redness, a few strands of hair damp with sweat clinging to his forehead, as the train started moving. He gently tugged at my sleeve. Wen Yen, he said, I'm feeling a bit dizzy. I glanced at him. I can see that. He seemed taken aback by my coldness, pausing for a moment with a hint of hurt in his eyes. You used to always have motion sickness medicine ready for me in advance, as if delirious from the fever. His voice grew fainter. Last time I had a fever, you went out in the pouring rain to buy medicine for me. When my stomach hurt, you would stay by my side and rub my belly. With every word he spoke, my heart sank a little deeper. These were clearly events from past lives. I frantically called out to the system in my mind, but all I heard was a harsh, grating busy signal. Before I could think, the bus jolted violently, a scream came from the front, landslide, the bus lurched uncontrollably to the right, and chaos instantly erupted inside the cabin. Lin Chusher, who had been groggy just moments before, suddenly snapped awake and instinctively threw himself toward Lin Wanwan in the front row, shielding her with his back. I was tossed around, while Zhou Yi yelled and used his arm to shield me from the flying gravel. Deskmate, this time you have to let me copy your homework, all the way until the college entrance exams are over, he shouted, grinning through gritted teeth. After the vehicle finally came to a stop, everyone got off, helping each other. Lin Wanwan was helped by Gu Chen and emerged completely unscathed. Lin Chusher, however, was protecting her and got a deep gash on his arm, so deep the bone was visible. Blood soaked through the sleeve of his school uniform. He sat alone on a roadside rock, tending to his wound with his head bowed. He looked up in Lin Wanwan's direction, his eyes dim and listless. Zhou Yi nudged my arm. Hey, aren't you going to check on him? I was bent over, cleaning his wound, and clicked my tongue impatiently at his words. Dude, worry about yourself first. As the cotton swab soaked in antiseptic pressed against the cut, Zhou Yi yelped and hopped around in pain, rubbing my ears, which were ringing from the noise. I suddenly felt someone's gaze on me. I turned my head and saw Lin Chusher staring at me, dumbstruck. He pressed his lips together, his eyes slightly reddening. I was about to turn away when he called out to stop me. Wen Yen, his voice was hoarse. I can't bandage it properly with one hand, could you help me? I let out a bitter laugh. Not my problem. Whoever you got hurt for is the one you should ask to patch you up. The hurt in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a sudden spark. Are you upset because I've been spending time with Wanwan? It's not what you think, I cut him off. You could be mother and son for all I care. Now move, you're in the way. He froze, staring in the direction I'd left. His hand fell to his side, abandoning the attempt to bandage his wound, letting it bleed. 5. The atmosphere on the return bus was much heavier than on the way there. Students were resting in small groups, no one speaking. Suddenly, Gu Chen stood up and announced that 500 yuan was missing from the class fund. It was in the outer pocket of my backpack right before we got on the bus, Gu Chen said. Frowning as he checked his bag, the carriage erupted into chaos. Someone shouted, check the bags, the money can't have been transferred yet. Amidst the chaotic chorus of agreement, Lin Chusher silently clutched her worn-out backpack tightly. This subtle movement did not go unnoticed. Lin Chusher, what's in your bag? A boy asked. Lin Chushi's face instantly turned pale. Just some books, let's have a look. Several boys snatched his bag without another word. The bag was torn open, and its contents spilled out onto the ground. A few old books, a worn-out wallet, and a stack of loose change. What's this? Gu Chen picked up the stack of cash and counted it. Exactly 500 yuan. Lin Chusher shook his head in a panic. This isn't the class fund. This is my mom's medicine money for this month. Stop pretending. A girl said shrilly. Everyone knows your family is dirt poor. Where would you get 500 yuan? His classmates all looked at him with contempt. Finally, his gaze fell on Lin Wanwan, his voice hoarse. Wanwan, you know, I just got my paycheck from my part-time job yesterday. But Lin Wanwan looked at him with disappointment. Chusher, I really never thought you'd do something like this. If you needed money, you could have told us. How could you steal the class fund? The light in Lin Chushi's eyes shattered instantly. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Seeing him so lost, I suddenly remembered how, in every past life, I was always the first to defend him whenever he was misunderstood. But this time, even though I didn't want to be involved with him anymore, I couldn't just pretend not to see the truth I knew. Eventually, I pointed to the luggage rack and said helplessly, is that stack of stuff the class fund you've been looking for? Everyone's eyes shifted to the luggage rack, where a bundle of cash was wedged in the crevice. The train car fell silent, and the students exchanged awkward glances. Too embarrassed to utter a word, Gu Chen was the first to snap out of it and murmured an apology. Lin Wanwan also blushed and murmured, "I'm sorry," but Lin Chushi just stared straight at me, his eyes shining with an astonishing intensity. As we got off, he quickly caught up to me, his voice breathless and urgent. "Wen Yen, wait." I stopped and looked at his flustered state. The wound on his arm began to bleed again, staining the makeshift bandage red. "Just now, thank you," he said awkwardly. Pursing his lips, I nodded and took a step back. "It's nothing, it just happened to be you. If it were anyone else, I would have warned them too. After all, I was the one who happened to see the class fund. I've figured it out." "Wen Yen," he said, grabbing my arm again just as I was about to leave. He said urgently, his eyes flickering with unease, "I was wrong before. I shouldn't have always been hovering around Wan Wan. I'll keep my distance from her from now on, I promise. Please don't shut me out. Let's make it work this time, okay?" Watching him make this baffling promise only confirmed my suspicions. So, he really did have all his memories back. In that case, I couldn't be bothered to keep dancing around the subject with him. "Lin Chushi," I cut him off, my voice eerily calm. "I remember everything. Just like you, every lifetime's memories are clear to me." His face paled instantly, lips trembling. You remember," not in the mood for his nonsense. I turned to leave, but he blocked my path again. "Wen Yen, what are you two up to?" Zhou Yi popped up out of nowhere, barging right between us. "What's the secret? Don't leave me out." I seized the chance to put some distance between us. "It's nothing, we're heading the same way anyway, let's go together." Zhou Yi followed me with a grin. I had no way of knowing that after I left, Lin Chushi remained rooted to the spot, staring in the direction I had gone, lost and forlorn. His injured arm hung limply at his side, while with his other hand, he slowly, deliberately picked at the wound that had just stopped bleeding, until fresh blood once again soaked his entire sleeve. 6. Ever since that day, Lin Chushi began appearing in every corner of my life, like a silent shadow. After school, he would follow me from a distance of about 10 meters, making sure I got home safely. Every morning, a bottle of warm milk would appear on my desk, and on rainy days, an umbrella would be waiting by the classroom door. All the careful, tender affection he once had for Lin Wanwan was now directed entirely at me. I once tried to return the milk to him in person, but he just lowered his head and said, "If you don't want it, just throw it away." And the next day, it was the same as always. This state of affairs continued right up until the day of the college entrance exams. As I walked out of the exam hall after finishing the Chinese test, I overheard a few classmates talking. "Lin Chushi didn't show up for the exam today. He missed the very first one. I heard he got beaten up by his dad this morning and ended up in the hospital, lost a lot of blood." My footsteps faltered. In my past lives, I would always wait outside his house beforehand to stop his drunken father, but this time, I didn't. I later heard that while he was being beaten black and blue, he kept muttering, "Wen Yen will come save me," but this time, there was no Wen Yen. I finished all the exams with ease, and as I walked out of the venue for the final test, the long-awaited system prompt finally chimed. "Host, the approval has come through. It'll take a little more time before departure from this world. I prepared a plane ticket and money for you. You can take a vacation abroad." I looked up at the bustling crowd outside the exam hall, where parents were holding bouquets to welcome their children. In the crowd, I saw Lin Chushi. He stood on the very edge, a bandage on his temple and his arm in a sling, quietly watching me. When our eyes met, his lit up, as if he wanted to come towards me, but I quickly turned and melted into the flow of people, without looking back. I never imagined the systems a little while would turn out to be 7 years. I finished university abroad, landed a decent job, and life was smooth sailing. Zhou Yi and I would occasionally mail each other local specialties, but beyond that, I had lost touch with my old classmates. I never thought I'd run into Lin Chushi again. The youthful innocence had faded from him, leaving the exact image I remembered from after our marriage, yet, a shadow of brooding intensity and obsession now clouded his once gentle eyes. He knocked me out from behind. When I came to, I found myself imprisoned in a villa. A delicate silver chain was fastened to my wrist, its length just enough to allow me to move about the room. The system's shriek exploded in my mind. Host, how did he turn to the dark side? The higher-ups ran multiple scans. His profile was confirmed as the gentle, melancholic, devoted supporting male lead. No signs of yandere or obsessive tendencies were detected. I rubbed my aching nape. Yandere or not? Who knows, but attempting suicide 4 times just because the male and female leads got married, isn't that obsessive enough? The higher-up scans really are unreliable. Lin Chusher pushed the door open and entered, carrying a tray in his hands. He carefully placed the food on the bedside table, his voice gentle. "You're awake." He sat down on the edge of the bed, his fingers lightly brushing my cheek. "I've been looking for you for 7 years. I've thought of you every single day." I turned my head away, avoiding his touch. He stubbornly turned my face towards him, his voice low and husky. "For these 7 years, in every city, every country, I never gave up." I looked at him coldly. "So what if you found me?" His voice faltered, then he spoke with urgency. "Now that I've found you, I want to explain. I know, the old me was truly irresponsible. I was wrong. So locking me up now is your idea of making it up to me?" I cut in, my voice dripping with sarcasm. He was at a loss for words. When he looked up, the corners of his eyes were red. "Darling, please believe me. I know I was wrong. I truly do. I love you." Hearing that term of endearment, I was taken aback for a moment before letting out a bitter laugh. "Lin Chusher, if you love me, then tell me, was the child we lost back then a boy or a girl?" At my words, his expression shattered instantly. His eyes welled up. His voice choked with emotion. "I'm sorry. I was utterly unworthy of being a father back then. Every time I think of that child, it feels like a knife twisting in my heart. I know it's far too late to say any of this now, but Wen Yin, please, give me a chance. Let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Darling, I love you. I truly do." Seeing him in such agony, I closed my eyes. Whatever. In 3 days, I'll be free from this world anyway. 7. For the next 2 days, Lin Chusher attended to my every need with meticulous care. Almost to the point of being overly cautious, he remembered all my preferences. Every dish he cooked was my favorite, and he even chose my beloved white tea scent for the room's diffuser. If I asked for water, he'd pour it. If I wanted fruit cut, he'd slice it. Even when I capriciously demanded something unavailable in this country, he'd somehow manage to procure it for me. He followed my every command without question. Except for that silver chain on his wrist, he absolutely refused to take it off. "Just wait a little longer." Every time I brought it up, he'd avoid my gaze. "Wait until I'm sure you won't leave." Every night, he would restlessly hold me from behind, burying his face in the crook of my neck, murmuring over and over in a low voice, "Wen Yin, Wen Yin." I never responded, like a lifeless puppet, until the final night, when he murmured my name once more. I fell silent for a moment before whispering softly, "Go to sleep." I felt his body stiffen for a moment before he held me even tighter. A warm, damp sensation spread across my neck as the collar of my pajamas grew wet with his tears. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Lin Wanwan. I leaned against the headboard, watching his back grow rigid as he answered the call. A woman's faint sobs came through the line, saying she was getting married and hoped he would come to the wedding. After hanging up, he was silent for a long time. His phone screen glowed, showing he had already booked a round-trip ticket. "The flight out is this afternoon, and the return is just 2 hours later." "Honey," he said hesitantly as he walked to the bedside, "it's Wanwan. I'll just make an appearance and come right back." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "I'll be here, waiting for you." He seemed taken aback by how readily I agreed. After a moment's pause, he explained urgently, "I'll only be gone for 2 hours, just for the ceremony. Look, I booked a round-trip ticket. I'll be back tonight." Watching him frantically pack his bags, I couldn't help but find it amusing. It turns out some people can't change their ingrained instincts, no matter how many times they get a second chance. The moment he closed the door, the system's prompt chimed right on cue. "Host, the departure channel is now open. You have 3 hours left to bid this world farewell. No need to wait that long. Send me away now." "Are you sure?" "There are still 3 hours, I'm sure." I closed my eyes. I don't want to stay a second longer. As his plane soared into the sky, my world began to dissolve into stardust. With one last glance, I saw the note he left on the nightstand. "Wait for me, my love. When I return, we'll start over." The handwriting was hurried, yet it held a hint of cautious hope. Sadly, there are no second chances. This time, I'm the one who leaves first. 8. I asked the system to let me choose how to leave this world, and I deliberately picked the most brutal option. With the pain blocked out, I watched as my skin began to fissure inch by inch, blood seeping from countless fine wounds, staining the sheets beneath me crimson. I had my own motives. After watching Lin Chusher leave in such a decisive manner so many times, I had to get my own back. At the wedding, Lin Chusher sat among the guests, growing increasingly restless. He sent me over a dozen messages, but but they all went unanswered. The calls I made went straight to voicemail, and eventually, the phone was switched off. "I'm sorry, I have to go," he said abruptly, standing up and rushing out of the wedding venue under the astonished gazes of the crowd. On the plane, he clutched his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. An indescribable panic seized his heart. The same foreboding he'd felt in previous lives each time he chose to end it. As he pushed open the villa's main door, the thick, metallic scent of blood hit him. His fingers began to tremble uncontrollably, barely able to keep their grip on the doorknob. The bedroom door was ajar. The blood that had seeped out now dried and darkened. Summoning his courage, he pushed the door open, and the sight before him made his heart stop. I lay quietly on the bed, a pool of glaring red beneath me. Blood had soaked through the sheets, even dripping onto the floor where it had congealed into dark stains. He stumbled to the bedside, his fingers trembling as he reached to check for my breath. The next second, he collapsed to his knees, letting out a heart-wrenching cry of anguish. He clutched my already cold body tightly, holding onto it as if it were his last lifeline. "No, Wen-yen, please." His tears fell in heavy drops onto my face, mingling with the blood. "I was wrong. I know I was wrong. This scene feels all too familiar. Once, I too knelt on a rooftop, begging him not to jump. Back then, I was just like this, clinging to his leg, crying my heart out. But what did he do then? He gave me a sorrowful smile, gently pried my fingers open, and without hesitation, leapt down. Back then, you pleaded with me just like this, choking back sobs. He pressed my icy palm against his own face. But I actually treated you that way." His weeping gradually faded into a whisper, becoming a murmur of utter despair. "So this is what it feels like to watch the person you love most die before your eyes." But all of this, I could no longer see or hear. In the final moment before my consciousness completely left this world, all I saw was the blurred silhouette of him kneeling in a pool of blood. A soft system chime sounded. Task world departure complete. Host, welcome back. 9. After returning to my own world, I immediately dove into a new assignment. This time, I carefully selected a startup storyline, a self-made female entrepreneur who fought her way to the top of the industry. I'm never taking on another lousy redemption arc again. In this new world, I'm fully occupied with expanding the market and developing products, making every day incredibly fulfilling. Playing the lead in my own life story is far more interesting than getting caught up in romance. That day, while I was reviewing the quarterly reports, the system suddenly chimed in for a chat. "Host, did you know something major has happened on Lin Chashi's end?" Without even looking up from my documents, I replied, "What? Did he try to kill himself again? That's even more over the top." The system's electronic voice buzzed with gossipy excitement. "He had the body from that world cremated, the ashes are in a custom crystal urn, and he sleeps with it every night. He's abandoned the company, just holed up in the bedroom where you last saw each other." I arched an eyebrow and kept scanning the report in front of me. "And the worst part is," the system whispered, lowering its tone, "he used some unknown method to gather every trace of you from every world, photos, videos, even things you once used. He keeps them all in a secret room." When Lin Wanwan went to see him, he threw her out on the spot, saying, "Don't disturb Wen-yen and me." Tisk, I took a sip of coffee, a control freak to his core. Just as I thought. The most extreme part is, after hearing a rumor you might be in another world, he became obsessed with researching time travel. They say he sacrificed half his lifespan just to. The system's voice cut off abruptly, replaced by a sharp, piercing shriek. I looked up, sensing something. And through the office floor-to-ceiling window, I saw a familiar figure standing downstairs, Lin Chusher. He had lost a lot of weight, his suit hung loosely on his frame, and his face was frighteningly pale, but his eyes were startlingly bright, fixed intently on me. The system stammered. He actually found me." I calmly met his gaze and even offered a smile. Then, I averted my eyes and pressed the intercom. "Anna, get ready. We're moving up the acquisition of that tech company." "Host, aren't you going to hide? He's right downstairs. What's the rush?" I calmly signed the last document. "System, settle the mission points for this world. Mission completion rate, 98%. Rating, S-class. But, host, send me to the next world." I stood up, casting one last glance at that stubborn figure down below. I refused to believe he has that many lives to sacrifice. As the white light of teleportation enveloped me, I saw Lin Chashi's figure frantically charging towards the building's entrance. Too bad, he was a step too late. Once again, he failed to catch up to me. I closed my eyes. "Go on, chase me, no matter what. You'll never catch up to me." 10. In between missions, I managed to slip back to see Zhou Yi twice. The first time was for his wedding, I quietly sat in the last row of the wedding, watching this former school bully who used to be so carefree, now dressed in a sharp suit. His hands trembling with nervousness. After the ceremony, he saw me, his eyes lit up instantly, and he eagerly pulled the bride along as he rushed over. Wen Yen, this is the desk maid I've always told you about, he introduced cheerfully to the bride, then turned to me and said, this is my wife, Li Xiaoyun. The bride smiled gently and handed me wedding candies, saying, Zhou Yi always talks about you, saying how you used to let him copy your homework back in the day. Seeing the happiness radiating from Zhou Ye's face, I was suddenly reminded of that rainy day in our final year of high school, when he gritted his teeth and used his injured hand to shield me from the flying gravel. It's wonderful that he has now found his own happiness and fulfillment. The second time I went back was for his child's 1-month celebration. The little one was chubby, lying in the crib and blowing bubbles. Zhou Yi fumbled around making formula, grumbling, this little lord is so hard to please, but the smile in his eyes was unmistakable. How are you doing these days? He asked me while patting the baby's back, still drifting around alone overseas. I nodded. I've been through 5 cycles in this world, the first 4, I revolved entirely around Lin Chushi. It wasn't until this last one that I somehow, by a twist of fate, made a friend like Zhou Yi. This friendship turned out to be the warmest reward I gained from that long, arduous mission. Before setting off for the new world once more, I went to say goodbye to Zhou Yi. I brought a longevity locket for his child. The little one grabbed the bell on the locket and giggled. Heading back overseas again, Zhou Yi saw me off at the airport, fussing over me. Take good care of yourself out there alone. Call anytime if you need anything. And if you meet someone suitable, don't be too picky, just settle down. His constant, gentle nagging filled the void left by my lack of parents. I listened to his advice with a smile, never interrupting. Wen Yen, he said, looking at me earnestly as we parted, no matter where you are, be happy, call me if you need anything, no matter what happens, our friendship from sharing a desk will last forever. I couldn't help but laugh again. I nodded and waved goodbye. As I turned to walk through the security checkpoint, I heard him call out from behind. Don't forget to come back and visit often. Outside the airplane window, the clouds looked like fluffy cotton candy. The system asked softly, host, what kind of world would you like to go to this time? Anywhere is fine. I closed my eyes. As long as Lin Chushi isn't there, I know that no matter which world I go to, there will always be a place where someone genuinely wishes for my happiness. That is enough. Story 2, in my past life, I always missed Gu Jianzhou with regret. It was not easy for us to get married after many twists and turns. On the wedding night, he said he was going to participate in foreign aid construction projects abroad. He left me behind and was gone for 10 years without any news. 10 years later, he came back with the woman he had liked since his youth, Shen Zhixin. We didn't get the marriage certificate or consummate the marriage back then, so our marriage is not legal. I'm getting married, and it's inappropriate for you to stay in my house any longer. Only then did I realize that the regretful misses I thought were just his deliberate actions. He had a happy family reunion, was riding high on success, moved into a new house, and married a new bride. But what about me? People say the city is full of beautiful flowers like brocade, yet I didn't come across spring when I arrived, living again. I took the first step and left without saying goodbye on the wedding day. However, he completely broke down at the wedding without the bride. 1. Jianzhou, your little fiancé is here again to check up on you. She's so clingy, as if she's afraid that you, this phoenix, will fly away. Yeah, she might as well tie you to her waist. Don't talk nonsense. Look, the little girl's face is blushing. I suddenly raised my eyes and looked at the owner of that soft female voice. It was Yao Sivan. She had black hair, fair skin, and a slender figure. When she smiled, she was sweet and innocent. She was the recognized goddess of the Department of Architecture. She was also the woman that Gu Jianzhou never forgot and pursued throughout his life in his past life. At this moment, I suddenly realized, I was reborn to the time before the wedding, when Gu Jianzhou took a marriage leave to come back and hold the wedding, and Yao Sivan was the sweetheart he brought back in his past life. At this time, she was smiling and looking at me. Are you looking for Jianzhou? He'll come downstairs soon, too. I stood in the sunlight, lost in a daze. Gu Jianzhou had already walked over with a cold face. What are you doing here again? He walked through the crowd and stood in front of me. He grabbed my arm and pulled me to a small path on the side. I'm having a gathering with my classmates. Do you have to pester me? He pushed his glasses and looked at me with displeasure. Shen Zhixin, there are only 5 days left until the wedding. Can you give me the last 5 days of freedom? The lush branches above cast large patches of shade, the sunlight filtered through the gaps in the shade, shimmering on his face like broken pieces of gold, but in his eyes when he looked at me, there was only the coldness like frost and snow. I looked at the man in front of me, the man I had loved for 18 years in my past life. Now he was in the prime of his life, elegant and handsome. But who could have imagined how cruel and cold-hearted this person was beneath that good-looking appearance? I withdrew my gaze, lowered my eyes, and smiled. Sorry, Gu Jianzhou, I won't bother you anymore. After saying that, I turned around and was about to leave, but Gu Jianzhou grabbed my arm again. What kind of temper are you throwing now? I've already agreed to marry you. What else are you dissatisfied with? I suddenly turned around and shook off his hand. Gu Jianzhou was a bit stunned. But soon the disgust in his eyes became even more pronounced. Shen Jixian, if you keep making trouble, we might as well cancel the wedding. 3. I took a deep breath. I swallowed all the unwillingness, grievances, hatred, and bitterness surging in my chest. I will return everything he did to me in my past life, exactly as it was. So, when I spoke again, my tone had softened. When I looked at him, there was also a hint of grievance in my eyes. I'm not making trouble. I just have some things to ask for your opinion about the wedding. So that's why I came. Gu Jianzhou waved his hand to interrupt me before I could finish. I have no opinion. I've said it before. Just do it according to your preferences. Okay, then I won't ask you about the following procedures. It seemed that because I was behaving very obediently, or perhaps because there was still a bit of guilt in his heart. Gu Jianzhou suddenly raised his hand and rubbed the top of my head. All right. I'll come back early tonight to have dinner with you. I pretended to be happy. Okay. Then I'll wait for you. Gu Jianzhou couldn't help but smile, but in an instant, he frowned and suppressed his smile. I pretended not to notice and left happily. I walked a long way, then I slowly squatted down under the shade of the trees and let my tears flow freely. 4. During dinner, Gu Jianzhou came back, but he wasn't alone. He brought Yao Siban with him. In his past life, he had always hidden his feelings. And I knew nothing about his liking for Yao Siban. In this life, before marrying me, he couldn't help but show his eagerness. Yao Siban greeted everyone in the Gu family with a sweet smile. She also gave each of them exquisitely packaged gifts. Yao Siban was beautiful, elegant, and dignified, standing beside Gu Jianzhou, who was tall, slender, and handsome. They were a perfect match. And I seemed to be an outsider who didn't fit in. Jixian, this is for you. I wish you and Jianzhou a happy wedding. Yao Siban walked up to me and handed me the gift. I took it openly and thanked her. She seemed a bit surprised by my reaction, pursed her lips, and the smile in her eyes gradually faded. Jixian, go and prepare the meal. Aunt Gu naturally gave me the order. Just like countless times before, I put the gift down and raised my finger wrapped in a band-aid. I said lightly, I accidentally cut my hand this morning, so I can't cook tonight. Gu Jinchuan rolled his eyes. You're so delicate. Just because you cut your hand, you can't cook. Gu Jinxiu also chimed in. I think you just want to be lazy. Aunt Gu looked at me and smiled. Jixian is going to be a bride. Of course, a bride is delicate. I have to be the old woman to do it then. Yao Siban quickly followed to the kitchen. Aunt, since Jixian's hand is injured, let me help you. How can that be? You're a guest. It's okay, Aunt. I'm just going to help out. Soon Yao Siban came out with the cooked dishes. Jixian, come and take the dishes. I still need to help Aunt peel the scallions. She naturally asked me to help. I stood up and was just about to take the plate, but before my hand touched it, the plate flipped over directly. The scalding fish pieces spilled all over Yao Siban, especially on her bare calves, which were instantly scalded red. She let out a cry, squatted down and covered her calf, and tears filled her eyes. Shen Jixian, did you do it on purpose? Gu Jianzhou was furious and pushed me aside. 5. I stumbled a few steps and still fell to the ground. My palm happened to press on the sticky fish pieces, and the sharp fishbone pierced the skin. My forehead also hit the edge of the table heavily. Gu Jianzhou carefully helped Yao Siban up, then he coldly looked at me. Hurry up and apologize to Siban. I endured the intense pain and stood up shakily. The blood from my palm flowed down and dripped onto my skirt, creating a shocking sight. Gu Jianzhou seemed to be stunned for a moment, but then the coldness gradually filled his eyes as he looked at me. Jixian, apologize. Jianzhou, it's okay. Jixian didn't mean not to take the plate on purpose. Yao Siban quickly tugged at his sleeve and softly tried to dissuade him. Shen Jixian, didn't you hear what I said? I told you to apologize to Siban. What if I don't want to? Then I will cancel the wedding immediately. Gu Jianzhou stood up and looked down at me. Shen Jixian, you know my temper. I never take back what I say. 6. Yao Siban stood behind him. When I looked at her, She secretly curled her lips into a smile. I knew she was provoking me. She didn't want me to apologize. She wanted the wedding to be cancelled. She wanted to marry Gu Jianzhou. She didn't want to marry someone she didn't love. And she had gone through many detours. She finally got her wish when she got married for the second time, but I didn't let her get what she wanted. Okay, I'll apologize. I pursed my lips, with tears in my eyes. There was both grievance and fear on my face, and the moment I apologized, Gu Jianzhou clearly let out a sigh of relief, although soon, he turned cold again. Don't let it happen again. He took the first aid kit that Gu Jinchuan brought. He glanced at me coldly. The wedding is just a few days away. Be more obedient. I lowered my head and wept silently. I looked timid and terrified. Gu Jianzhou carefully treated Yao Siban's injury and then said gently, I'd better take you to the hospital to have a look, in case there's a scar left. Is it inconvenient? Zhixian will be unhappy. No, it was her who caused the trouble in the first place. After Gu Jianzhou finished speaking, he gave me a very cold look. She caused the trouble. And I have to clean up the mess for her. What right does she have to be unhappy? Gu Jianzhou didn't come back that night. A strange number sent me a few messages. He's worried about my injury and afraid that I'll be in pain, so he's going to stay with me tonight. Go to bed early. Don't wait in vain. New bride. She was right. I really should go to bed early. There were still many things waiting for me to deal with. For example, those old houses and shops left by my parents. And the inheritance they left me. The houses should be handed over to a reliable real estate agent for sale, and after liquidating and organizing all the inheritance, I will take it all away. I won't leave a single cent for the Gu family. 7. The day before the wedding, I needed to try on the wedding dress again for the final adjustment. In my past life, Gu Jianzhou just briefly tried on the groom's suit and then left. This time, he actually didn't leave until I finished trying on the main wedding dress. He was still sitting on the sofa outside, and when I came out, there was clearly a flash of amazement in his eyes. The waist circumference seems a bit big. It would be better to tighten it a little more for a better effect. After the stylist said softly, Gu Jianzhou also agreed. Indeed, Zhixian has a slender waist. Let's tighten it a bit more. But I shook my head. No need. This is more comfortable. Anyway, I won't wear it. So it doesn't matter if it's big or small. When you first came to our house as a child, you cried every day and every night. He stood up and walked over, hugging my waist from behind. In the blink of an eye, you've grown into a beautiful young woman, Zhixian. We're getting married. He lowered his head, his eyes filled with affection, and he wanted to kiss me, but I raised my hand to block him. There are people here. I pretended to be shy, and Gu Jianzhou chuckled, looking very pleased. Then we'll wait until the wedding night. He whispered in my ear, and I lowered my head and smiled ironically without a sound. The bride and groom can't meet on the night before the wedding. Since I didn't have a family of my own, I stayed in a hotel. When Gu Jianzhou sent me to the downstairs, his phone happened to ring. It should have been Yao Siban who called. He seemed a bit distracted. I deliberately made a jealous and aggrieved expression. Gu Jianzhou raised his eyebrows. All right. The wedding is tomorrow. Don't pull a long face at me because of trivial matters, then come to pick me up early tomorrow. I looked up at him, my eyes full of uneasiness and anticipation. Gu Jianzhou was clearly pleased. I'll come according to the auspicious time. Don't worry. After saying that, he left in a hurry. I also immediately turned around and went upstairs. I checked the bank cards and passbooks one last time, and then made a few calls to the real estate agent. Then I took a shower and went to bed. I had no dreams that night. 8. Gu Jianzhou, however, had some trouble falling asleep. When it was almost dawn, he took a short nap, but he dreamed of Shen Zhixian for no reason. In the dream, it was the scene of her trying on the wedding dress yesterday. Every frown, every smile, every move was very beautiful. During his negligence, Shen Zhixian had quietly transformed into a beautiful girl. Her waist was very slender. Her skin was very fair, although she wasn't as tall as Yao Siban. She was petite and cute. She wasn't as thin as Yao Siban and still had the greenness and plumpness of a young girl. The scene in the dream was a bit improper. This seemed to be the first time that he had absurd desires for Shen Zhixian, whom he had always disdained. When he was woken up by the phone call, Gu Jianzhou was somewhat inexplicably annoyed. He even wondered if he should postpone leaving for one more day. Should he wait until after the wedding night before leaving, at least? Since she had loved him for so many years, it could be considered a meager return to her, but the voice on the phone made him instantly sober up. What did you say? The bride is missing. He suddenly stood up, and his fingers holding the phone were slightly trembling. This is impossible. Did you go to the wrong room? No, Mr. Gu, we didn't go to the wrong room. The front desk said that the room was checked out 2 hours ago. Miss Shen's phone number can't be reached either. The makeup artist was almost crying. Gu Jianzhou felt a deafening buzzing in his ears like the sound of war. It took him a while to find his voice. I'll call her. Please wait for a moment. But Xin Zhixian's phone number couldn't be reached. Gu Jianzhou flipped through the contact list randomly, not knowing who to call. He didn't have any contact information of Xin Zhixian's friends or relatives. He knew nothing about her. Over the years, she had been infatuated with him and followed in his footsteps. He had already been certain that he had her firmly in his grasp, so even at this moment, he still couldn't believe that Xin Zhixian dared to leave him. Gu Jianzhou casually put on his clothes and drove to the hotel himself. On the way, he was so flustered that he even ran 2 red lights. When he was almost at the hotel, he called Xin Zhixian again, but still couldn't get through. His heart sank uncontrollably, but the makeup artist's phone call came again. Mr. Gu, the bride has been found. It was a misunderstanding just now. Gu Jianzhou felt his heart settle down immediately. The thick fog pressing on his heart seemed to be suddenly pushed aside by a big hand. The car suddenly braked and stopped by the roadside. His voice was a bit trembling. Say that again, Mr. Gu, the bride has been found. She said she didn't sleep well last night and temporarily changed the room. Gu Jianzhou didn't really hear what else the makeup artist said. He leaned back in the car seat and suddenly smiled. He was really crazy. Xin Zhixian loved him so much, loved him to the bone. How could she possibly run away from the wedding? What was even crazier was that he had almost believed it just now. It was really ridiculous and absurd. 9. Before the wedding, the Gu family had someone calculate the horoscopes of the two of them. Due to some taboos, the groom couldn't go to pick up the bride in person. When the wedding procession that picked up the bride returned to the wedding venue, Gu Jianzhou had already changed into a neatly ironed and expensive black suit and stood downstairs holding flowers. However, when the groomsmen got out of the car, their expressions were all different. And the originally scheduled bridesmaids didn't show up. The bride sat in the car, and her face was covered by a white veil. Only a vaguely beautiful side profile could be seen. Gu Jianzhou originally thought he wouldn't be very excited. After all, there was always a bit of reluctance in marrying Xin Zhixian, but for some unknown reason, at the moment he saw the bride in the car, there was still an inexplicable ripple in his heart. Under that indescribable emotion, there seemed to be a hidden joy surging. He thought of Xin Zhixian's beautiful and charming appearance when she tried on the wedding dress for the last time. He thought of her gentle and affectionate eyes looking at him. A soft and tender feeling seemed to quietly grow in his heart. In addition to his successful career, a woman's steadfast love for many years, it can also make a man feel extremely proud and satisfied. He held the bouquet of flowers and slowly walked up to the car. Several of the groomsmen were his old classmates and friends. At this time, they looked at him as if they wanted to say something but held back, and in the end, they didn't say anything. The car door opened, and Gu Jianzhou reached out his hand. Zhixian. He didn't know that when he pronounced her name, there was already a faint smile in his eyes. The fingers wrapped in white lace were soft and slender. They gently landed in his palm. Gu Jianzhou immediately held them, but the moment he held them, an unusual feeling suddenly rose in his heart. This didn't seem to be Xin Zhixian's hand. Her fingers were softer, and her hands were softer too. He could just hold them in his palm, and at this moment, the bride also turned around and got out of the car. Through the white veil, she looked at Gu Jianzhou shyly and timidly. However, the moment their eyes met, Gu Jianzhou suddenly shook off the hand he was holding. The color seemed to completely drain from his face in an instant, and around them, there was a deathly silence. Yao Sivan was first stunned, then couldn't believe it. In the end, her eyes were already red with grievance and embarrassment. 10. The bouquet of flowers in Gu Jianzhou's hand fell. He turned around, grabbed someone at random, and asked in a hoarse voice, "What's going on? Where is Xin Zhixian? Didn't you go to the hotel to pick her up? Didn't you even notice that you picked up the wrong person? What are you doing?" His emotions suddenly got out of control, and his voice suddenly rose a notch. "We don't know either. When we went to pick up the bride, Sivan was the only one in the room. Yeah, we didn't see Xin Zhixian at all." Gu Jianzhou turned around and his gaze fixed on the makeup artist. "Didn't you say the bride was found? Is this what you call found, Mr. Gu? It's not my fault." The makeup artist was almost crying. She was just a worker. What could she do? If Miss Yao hadn't said that she would take all the responsibility, she wouldn't have dared to tell such a lie at all. She just wanted to earn this money. "Jianzhou, it has nothing to do with her. It was my arrangement." Yao Sivan got out of the car and stood up straight with her back. Her eyes were very red, but her face was calm and composed. "Zhixian is missing, and the wedding is about to start. I didn't want you to be embarrassed, so I came up with such an idea. If you want to blame someone, blame me. If you want to scold someone, scold me." It has nothing to do with anyone else." When she said this, she suddenly lowered her head slightly. When the tears she had been holding back fell, Yao Sivan gave a sad smile again. "I like you so much that I did something stupid. Jianzhou, why don't we just let it be? Don't you have a crush on Sivan all the time? Besides, Sivan shares the same ideals and pursuits with you. Isn't she much better than your little child bride? On such an important day as the wedding." She lost her temper and left just like that. "Do you really want to invite her back with a grand procession? Who knows how much trouble she might cause in the future? The auspicious time is coming soon. Jianzhou, make a decision quickly." Everyone chattered on. Yao Sivan gradually stopped sobbing, and there was a faint hope in her eyes as she looked at Gu Jianzhou. Gu Jianzhou stood still for a long time. Then he slowly turned around and looked at everyone. Yao Sivan in the white wedding dress was very beautiful. He didn't deny that he and Yao Sivan did share the same ideals and pursuits. He had a crush on Yao Sivan during their days together, but he also always knew that the person he was going to marry was Shen Jixian. He had already regarded her as his wife in his heart, even though he had gradually come to think Shen Jixian was no longer worthy of him. But he had never thought of breaking the marriage contract. Instead, he let her cling to him. But Gu Jianzhou never expected. He didn't have the determination to dump Shen Jixian. He was going to fulfill the agreement and have a wedding with her, even though he had hidden from her the fact that he was going to participate in foreign aid construction abroad. But he had also decided that he would postpone his departure for a few days, to give her a perfect wedding and a wedding night. If he was lucky, she would have a child. From then on, she could also establish a firm foothold in the Gu family. He could be considered to have not betrayed the kindness of her family and her love for him over the years, but now, Shen Jixian had disappeared on the eve of the wedding. 11. Gu Jianzhou couldn't figure it out. Where did she get the courage to act like this with him? Just because he had gotten a little closer to Yao Sivan, just because that day in the Gu family, he had protected the scalded Yao Sivan and blamed her. But where did Shen Jixian get the confidence to act like this with him? Was she not afraid that this marriage would be completely cancelled? Or did she think that relying on the kindness of her parents, she could really do whatever she wanted and play with him at will? Gu Jianzhou had never been so angry and ill-mannered in his life. He even thought that maybe he should just let it be, as his friends said, just marry Yao Sivan. But for some unknown reason, he looked at the beautiful and elegant Yao Sivan in front of him. The wedding dress she was wearing was the main wedding dress that Shen Jixian had chosen. She was a little taller than Shen Jixian, but she was thinner than her. Therefore, the waist was looser, and the chest was even more empty. He couldn't help but think of Shen Jixian's appearance when she tried on the wedding dress yesterday. She stood in front of him, delicate and graceful, but with full curves. He was really amazed at that time. Shen Jixian's usual clothes were very ordinary, mostly loose and casual, so he didn't even know that she was so beautiful when dressed up. Jianzhou, seeing that he stood there without moving for a long time, Yao Sivan couldn't help but call out softly, but Gu Jianzhou suddenly raised his hand, tore off the groom's boutonniere on his chest, and casually threw it on the ground. Jixian is suddenly not feeling well. Let's postpone the wedding to another day. After saying that, he didn't look at anyone, nor did he look at Yao Sivan again. He just turned around and left directly. Yao Sivan stood there in a daze. Gradually, her face turned red. Everyone's eyes were on her face and body. Some felt sorry for her. Some were indignant for her. But more people seemed to be waiting to see her make a fool of herself. Yao Sivan's whole body was shaking, and her fingertips were cold and trembling constantly. She had never experienced such humiliation in her life. Even though her family background was ordinary, she had relied on her own efforts to get into a university in Beijing all the way. As the belle of the Department of Architecture, she had always been the center of attention among the boys. Gu Jianzhou had also been very attentive to her on a daily basis, but it was such a man whom she had treated like a lapdog. He actually made her so embarrassed in full view of everyone. Why? Yao Sivan tore off the veil. When the tears burst out, she threw the veil hard on the ground. 12. It wasn't until I got on the plane to leave that I finally let out a sigh of relief. The plane soared into the high clouds. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes gently. Everything that had been like a nightmare in my past life came to a brief end at this moment. I don't know what the future path will be like, but I only know one thing. After staying away from this ungrateful family, my future will only become brighter and brighter. When I was 5 years old, my parents died in an earthquake. At the most critical moment, they tried their best to push Gu Jianzhou out, and he managed to save his life. So, the Gu family naturally adopted me as a way to repay the favor. They also arranged a marriage between me and Gu Jianzhou to ensure that I would have someone to rely on for life. But after I grew up, this kindness changed its nature, as Gu Jianzhou's future became more promising. I, an orphan girl, became the lucky one who was seen as climbing up to the Gu family. Later, Gu Jianzhou went abroad for foreign aid construction and never sent any news again. I sold the house left to me by my parents to treat Gu Jianzhou's mother's illness. She was paralyzed for 5 years. And I took good care of her for 5 years. Later, Gu Jianzhou's younger brother and sister got married, had children. She said that an elder sister-in-law was like a mother. I willingly took out the inheritance left by my parents. When Gu Jianzhou got married, it was me who gave her the confidence with a dowry of 360,000 yuan. When she gave birth to a daughter, I gave her a red envelope of 60,000 yuan to show off. When she was beaten by her husband, I helped her seek justice, fought the divorce lawsuit, and personally picked her and the child up and brought them back to her parents' home. But when Gu Jianzhou finally wanted to drive me away, it was also her who said disdainfully, "We have raised you for more than 10 years. Our family has already repaid the kindness of your family. To repay the favor, we also sacrificed my elder brother's lifetime happiness. If you have a conscience, you should quickly make way for my sister-in-law." Later, when Gu Jianzhou came back with Yao Sivan, it was also her and her daughter who agreed to their marriage and happily accepted Yao Sivan. They also tacitly approved of Gu Jianzhou's decision to drive me away. In fact, Gu Jianzhou had been sending money back for 10 years. In fact, he and Yao Sivan had already lived together in a foreign country and had children. Everyone in the Gu family knew about it. Only I was kept in the dark and was squeezed dry of the last bit of my value of being used. In the end, I died miserably of a serious illness that couldn't be cured. Thinking of all this, I just feel it's extremely ridiculous. If my parents knew this in the afterlife, would they regret risking their lives to save Gu Jianzhou? I will never know the answer to this question. And I, who have lived 2 lifetimes, I no longer insist that good people will be rewarded. 13. Gu Jianzhou made countless phone calls but couldn't get through. And all the phone numbers of the people in the Gu family had also been blocked and deleted by Shen Jixian. At first, Mrs. Gu didn't take it seriously. "Jianzhou, don't go looking for her. Which new bride dares to make such a big fuss and put on such a big show? She's just trying to act coy and make you give in. We won't do it." In her opinion, Shen Jixian, an orphan girl with no one to rely on, she was full of love for her son whom she regarded as her pride. And she simply couldn't really run far away. Now that she had made such a scene, it was just to let off some steam. How could she be willing to give up such a great marriage? Gu Jianzhou stood by the window but didn't move for a long time. He always had an ominous premonition. Shen Jixian wasn't making trouble with him, nor was she using retreat as a means of advance. She was really angry, really, and didn't want to marry him anymore. Yesterday, when she tried on the wedding dress, the kiss that was pushed away, last night, when he sent her back to the hotel, she was so obedient and sensible that she urged him to leave. She was no longer like before. At the slightest sign of trouble, she would be anxious and come to him crying and making a fuss. She was extremely vigilant towards every isomerism who appeared around him. She cared about him so much that it gradually made him feel bored. So he had applied for the foreign aid construction project abroad without telling her. He had repaid the kindness he owed, and he didn't owe her anything. He could leave with a clear conscience. He could pursue another kind of life that he wanted, but he never expected that the person who took the first step at the wedding, it would actually be Shen Jixian. "Mom, what about my gold jewelry?" Gu Jianzhou suddenly spoke up. "You promised me that as soon as she entered the house, you would immediately ask her to buy me a whole set of gold jewelry. Now that she's run away and there's no trace of her, are my gold jewelry going to fly away too?" Gu Jianzhou's heart suddenly moved. Shen Jixian's parents left her a considerable inheritance. In addition to the house and the shops, there was also a large amount of cash deposit. In fact, over the years, on the surface, the Gu family had been raising her, but in reality, Gu Jianzhou had also heard about how much money the Gu family had spent from the Shen family. Now that he couldn't get in touch with Shen Jixian, but as long as the things in her name were still there, that meant she didn't really want to leave. She was just throwing a tantrum to scare him. "What are you in a hurry for? When she comes back and begs your brother to marry her, you can just ask her for whatever you want, right, Mrs. Gu said casually, but Gu Jianzhou still pouted. "Who knows when she'll come back? What if she doesn't come back? How could that be? You know how much she likes your brother." "That's true. If it weren't for the fact that she was sincere to my brother, I wouldn't have agreed to this marriage." Gu Jianzhou suddenly turned around and said, "Mom, you go out immediately and ask someone to inquire." "Inquire about what?" "Inquire about those properties in Jixian's name and see if they are still there." Mrs. Gu was immediately anxious. Jianzhou, what do you mean by that? If they are all still there. It means that Jixian is just throwing a tantrum at me this time. If they are all gone. Gu Jianzhou suddenly smiled self-deprecatingly and didn't continue, but Mrs. Gu immediately understood. She couldn't sit still any longer and rushed outside. I'll go and ask someone to inquire right away. Those houses of hers and those shops, it's not something that can be sold in a short time. Brother, what exactly do you mean? Could it be that Shen Jixian really ran away from the wedding? Gu Jinxiu was immediately anxious. She had already boasted in front of a group of her cousins. Now that Shen Jixian had really run away from the wedding, wouldn't her jewelry be gone? Where would she put her face? Gu Jianzhou sneered and looked at her. Why are you in such a hurry now? Didn't you always dislike her and not want this sister-in-law, who would turn down money? Yes, who would turn down money? So the Gu family looked down on Shen Jixian on one hand, but on the other hand, they clung to the marriage contract and refused to let go, and he himself, deep down in his heart, didn't he think the same way? Shen Jixian had money but had no one to rely on. All her relatives had died in the earthquake, and she was deeply in love with him. If he married her, her things would naturally become the Gu family's things, so he could apply for the foreign aid construction project abroad with peace of mind. Without any worries. Gu Jinxiu was despicable and selfish. Wasn't he also such a despicable person? Brother, she won't really leave, will she? Gu Jianzhou walked outside expressionlessly. I don't know, brother, if she really leaves, what should we do? Gu Jinxiu stamped her feet repeatedly. Mom said she wants to change to a villa, and the deposit has already been paid. Gu Jianzhou sneered again and again. Whoever wants to change the villa should pay for it, brother. Gu Jianzhou slammed the door and left, shutting out the ear-piercing cries behind him. I went to a southern city that I have always liked. When I was taking the college entrance examination, because Gu Jianzhou went to Beijing, I chased after him and went to Beijing as well. But in fact, the university I most desired to attend was not the one in Beijing. Now I have a lot of free time and am also financially independent. Naturally, I have the conditions to fulfill my dreams. After settling down, I directly bought a 2-bedroom apartment near that university. After taking a half-month break, I started preparing for the postgraduate entrance examination. I didn't get to study at this university as an undergraduate, but it's also good to study here for my postgraduate degree. In my past life, Gu Jianzhou achieved success and fame in his career. When he returned, his family was reunited. They moved into a new house, and he married a new bride. He was truly riding the crest of success. But what about me? People say that the city is full of beautiful flowers like brocade, yet I didn't come across spring when I arrived. The spring scenery of the whole city that I missed in my past life. I will make up for it myself in this life. In the second month after I settled down, Gu Jianzhou, who was originally supposed to go abroad for aid construction, suddenly showed up. At that time, the spring scenery was just right. I had just come out of the school library. I saw Gu Jianzhou standing downstairs at a glance. He had lost a lot of weight, but he was still outstanding among the bustling crowd. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have poured all my love into him during my early teenage years when I first fell in love. But now, the person who could make my heart race and my face blush just by looking at each other can no longer stir up the slightest ripple in my calm heart. I held my books and continued walking forward. Gu Jianzhou called my name in a low voice. Jixian, is there something? I looked at him with a calm gaze, just like looking at any passing stranger. I've been looking for you. What do you want from me? You are my fiancé. We have a marriage contract and we're engaged. It was just an engagement. We didn't get the marriage certificate, so it's not legal. Jixian. Gu Jianzhou's white shirt was still spotlessly clean. The way he wore glasses was once my favorite. Now he stands in front of me, looking exactly as I once liked. But what's the point? After you left, I thought a lot. I really didn't act appropriately with Yao Sivan. I just admired some of her academic achievements and had no romantic feelings for her. I've already made it clear to Yao Sivan. She went abroad half a month ago and won't come back in the future. Jixian, I promise that there won't be any similar things happening again. Come back with me. I haven't cancelled the wedding arrangements. As long as you come back. The wedding can be held at any time. Why do you think I'll go back with you? Is it because I used to like you a lot? I looked at him and smiled. Gu Jianzhou, haven't you figured it out yet? From the moment I left, you mean nothing to me anymore. Jixian, I know the previous things made you sad, and I've reflected on them. Nothing happened between me and Yao Sivan. I can swear. Is that important? Gu Jianzhou, I don't care about you and Yao Sivan at all, because I don't like you anymore. This can't be true. We grew up together. Jixin, you've liked me for so many years. Just because I've liked you for so many years doesn't stop you from having already applied for the foreign aid construction project abroad and planning to leave directly on the wedding day, does it? Gu Jinzhou's expression changed drastically. How do you know? I also know that you went with Yao Sivan. If nothing unexpected happens, you will start a new family in a foreign country, and I, who was left in the country by you, would have been kept in the dark all the time, fulfilling my filial duties for you, taking care of your family, emptying my family's savings, being squeezed dry of my value, and then being driven out of the house. Is that right, Gu Jinzhou? His face turned pale, and he looked at me in horror as if he were looking at a ghost. But I didn't let him off. I took a step forward slowly. If I'm not wrong, is your mother seriously ill? Gu Jinzhou suddenly took a step back. How do you know? Calculating the time, Gu Jinzhou's mother should have just been diagnosed with a serious illness. She was very concerned about face and kept it from her relatives and friends, so the news didn't spread. So, Gu Jinzhou, did you come to find me and ask me to go back because you really know you were wrong and want to make up for me? Or is it just to let me go back and be a servant to take care of your mother, and by the way, take out the inheritance I received to subsidize the bottomless pit of your family? How can you think of our Gu family like this? Gu Jinzhou's face turned pale and green. After all, she raised you for more than 10 years. Even if she has no merits, she has hard work, right? Shinji Xin. The money that the Gu family has taken over the years is enough to repay this kindness of raising. Gu Jinzhou, don't come to find me again. I have no relationship with the Gu family anymore, and I have nothing to do with you either. After saying that, I walked past him towards the school gate, but Gu Jinzhou still didn't give up and pestered me again. Jixin, calm down and think it over. Can you really let go of our feelings of so many years just like that? Yes, I let go of it a long time ago. Gu Jinzhou, you should let go of it as soon as possible too, instead of pestering me here. It's better to find a way to earn more money. After all, there will be a lot of places where your family needs to spend money in the future. Jixin, do you really have to be so heartless? I found it a bit ridiculous. Gu Jinzhou, when your whole family conspired against me, why didn't you show the slightest bit of compassion? But Jixin, we didn't actually harm you. All of this is just your own speculation. So what? Even if it's just speculation. I'm just nipping this possibility in the bud. Isn't that okay, Jixin? After all, we know each other well. Can you guarantee that if you marry someone else in the future, they won't scheme against you? I laughed bitterly. Do I only have the option of getting married? 15. Gu Jinzhou stayed in this city for a week. Later, I called the police, and then he left dejectedly. It seemed that he knew I was determined not to turn back. After he left, he didn't pester me anymore. When I successfully passed the postgraduate entrance examination, my classmates from my hometown privately contacted me. They said that the Gu family's reputation was now in tatters, and they were almost unable to get by. Gradually, more and more people who knew the truth began to reveal that their family was ungrateful, heartless, and had bullied the only daughter of their benefactor. So, Mrs. Gu got her comeuppance and was bedridden. Gu Jinchuan was idle outside, caused a lot of trouble, and was in prison for a few months. And Gu Jinxiu didn't get into university and had a gangster boyfriend, because she didn't want to take care of her mother. She simply moved to her boyfriend's house. The entire Gu family could only be supported by Gu Jinzhou alone. The huge medical expenses, plus the liquidated damages for the villa that Mrs. Gu had reserved before, emptied Gu Jinzhou's personal savings. He's really in a bad situation now. His former classmates and friends don't associate with him anymore. After hearing this, I just laughed it off. Without me, the big blood bag for their family to suck on, their current life is really difficult. But what does all this have to do with me? I have a house, a car, and a substantial savings, and I can continue to enjoy my carefree student days. Maybe I will meet someone I like in the future, maybe not. It's also good to live alone. The filthy quagmire of the Gu family can no longer disgust me in the slightest. Later, I heard that Gu Jinzhou left the Gu family behind and got back together with Yao Sivan. He even settled down in Shanghai with Yao Sivan. Yao Sivan gave birth to a son for him, and their life seemed to be going quite well. But after a few years, Gu Jinzhou slunk back from Shanghai alone. By then, the Gu family had sold everything they could sell. There was only a shabby rented house left. Mrs. Gu didn't receive treatment and careful care and died last year. Gu Jinchuan went to Myanmar to engage in telecom fraud, and as life and death are unknown, Gu Jinxiu got married early and had 3 children. She was beaten by her husband from time to time. Gu Jinzhou lived alone in this shabby rented house and drank heavily every day. The son born to Yao Sivan wasn't his. Back then, She was with him just to find a cheap father for her child. I was reborn. As soon as Yao Sivan got back together with her child's biological father, she dumped Gu Jianzhou. When I went back to my hometown to offer sacrifices for my parents' anniversary, I saw him once. Although he was only in his early 30s, most of his hair had turned white. He reeked of alcohol and sat on the street in a daze. Passers-by looked at him with disgust on their faces. Who could tell that he was the once glorious Gu Jianzhou? I'm not overly compassionate and don't feel sorry for him, however. I still feel a bit sad. In fact, when we were all children, Gu Jianzhou was very good to me, but later, we all grew up, and we all changed. When I walked past him, he seemed to recognize me and stood up excitedly, but then he suddenly turned around and covered his face tightly. I just pretended not to see him or recognize him and kept walking forward without stopping. Another spring has come. Another year with flowers like brocade. I won't look back, and I won't forgive. I will just keep walking forever and ever in the spring that belongs to Shenji Xian. Story 2. Everyone knows that Chen Yuechuan has an inseparable sister, Chen Miu. Though not related by blood, they were closer than many real siblings. On the day of our wedding, Chen Miu did everything she could to stop it, claiming that only one of us could live. Chen Yuechuan didn't care. He locked her at home and insisted on going through with the wedding. It wasn't until she cut her wrists and bled to death that he finally panicked. Since then, he retreated to the mountains, living by Chen Miu's grave for a lifetime. He abandoned our marital bond, demanding that I kneel before Chen Miu and repent in a low voice. Even my child was not spared. He watched indifferently as I miscarried and was rushed to the emergency room. He said, "An eye for an eye." This is just the beginning. Unwilling to endure further humiliation, I chose to jump from a building. Before dying, I saw Chen Yuechuan standing in the street, smiling with relief, murmuring, "Sister, the one who killed you has finally gotten her comeuppance." When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day of our wedding. This time, I would not choose him. "Brother, please don't marry her." "What are you talking about? Today is supposed to be a joyful day for me." "Stop your nonsense or I'll lock you at home." Chen Yuechuan's angry roar woke me up, and I suddenly looked up. In the familiar environment, with a familiar voice, I looked down at my white wedding dress, feeling somewhat dazed. Yes, I had been reborn at the most unforgettable moment in my memory. In my previous life, I was ecstatic, unable to contain my excitement about marrying the love of my life. But now, facing it all over again, I was trembling with fear. I would never forget the indifference in Chen Yuechuan's eyes as he looked at me, nor the uncontrollable joy he showed just before I died. Now it seems, he had not fully chosen me. While blaming Chen Miu, there was also pain and struggle in his eyes. Perhaps even he hadn't realized. His relationship with Chen Miu had crossed the boundaries of ordinary siblings, gradually succumbing to affection and tenderness, until Chen Miu's suicide made him fully aware, and he shifted all the blame onto me. While he comfortably basked in the sympathy of others, he loudly condemned me to the world, blaming me for Chen Miu's death. If it weren't for me, why would Chen Miu have died? Why would he end up guarding her grave for life? I was pelted with rotten eggs and spoiled vegetables by people who detested me, and even verbally abused. I took a deep breath, suppressing the complex emotions inside. This time, I would not stand for it. "Chen Yuechuan, if you really intend to marry, then don't expect to see me again." A piercing scream pulled my thoughts from the past. I got up, opened the door, and saw Chen Yuechuan coming towards me, angry. I quickly grabbed him. "Your sister is still young, don't be harsh with her." Chen Yuechuan was about to complain to me when his expression suddenly froze, staring at me, unable to react. It was well known that I disliked Chen Miu, and he had even prepared how to appease me, but he never expected to hear such words from me. Immediately, his eyes filled with uncontrollable anger. "But she spoke about you like that, about my future wife. How can I not care about this?" I asked, shaking my head nonchalantly. "She is your sister. After all, if things get too tense between you, how will you get along in the future?" Seeing his furrowed brow, I shook my head with a smile, took his arm, and spoke gently. "Don't worry, I'm not going to hold a grudge against her. We need to think of the bigger picture. She's your most important family member. Without her, the wedding wouldn't be complete. Do you want me to live with regret during the most important moment of my life?" Hearing this, Chen Yuechuan's expression gradually softened, replaced by a look of emotion and relief. He smiled faintly, indulgently reaching out to stroke my head. "Having you as my wife is the greatest fortune of my life." Chen Yuechuan's parents, standing nearby, nodded almost imperceptibly, very pleased with my response. In the distance, Chen Mia's hysterical screams continued. Chen Yuechuan quickly turned and walked towards her. I watched his departing figure until he crouched beside Chen Miu and affectionately embraced her. Chen Mia's expression shifted from anger to joy, and finally to intense pride. She glanced at me provocatively without leaving any traces. In a past life, I was unaware of the true nature of their relationship, assuming they were just unusually close siblings. Now, it was clear that their interactions were disturbingly abnormal at all times, but they didn't know, or even thought it was normal. Facing Chen Mia's gaze, I suddenly burst out laughing. This time, I won't stop you. I'm curious to see how things will unfold. I didn't know what the two whispered to each other in the distance before they walked over hand in hand. Chen Yuechuan's gaze flickered, his throat moved slightly, and he turned to look at me. Shen Zhuxin. Chen Miu mentioned she's never experienced being a bride, and since we're not in a hurry, why not let her take the bride's place today? As soon as he said this, the room fell silent. Everyone exchanged glances, their eyes filled with shock and disbelief. A brother marrying his sister, even if not related by blood, was scandalous. Moreover, how could such a significant matter as marriage be changed so casually? Chen's mother turned pale with anger, her body trembling as she pointed at Chen Yuechuan's face. You fool, do you realize what you are saying? She's your sister, how can she possibly be your bride? After a brief silence, the crowd began to murmur amongst themselves in low tones. Chen's father's expression changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure, realizing his words were inappropriate. Chen Yuechuan spoke softly. Shen Zhuxin, we have a long future ahead of us, and I believe you will understand. Chen Miu also nodded repeatedly. Sister Shen Zhuxin is so sensible, she will surely agree. Suddenly, I became the focal point of everyone's discussions. On what should have been the most important day of my life, an outsider was taking my groom. For a moment, countless curious eyes turned towards me. Inside, I felt calm, but outwardly, I had to put on a look of grievance. Since you have already decided, of course, I choose to support you. The disgrace isn't mine to bear. In the Chen family, when Chen Yuechuan made a decision, no one could ever change it, nor would it be altered for anyone else. As soon as the words were spoken, a snicker suddenly echoed around the room. The sound wasn't loud, but it was strikingly conspicuous in the cramped space. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound only to see Chen Muhe, nestled in Chen Yuechuan's arms, giggling. You really think you have a say, whether you agree or not? You're not part of today's wedding, Chen Muhe said disdainfully. Her eyes filled with scorn, not bothering to hide her disgust for me. I didn't appear the least bit humiliated and looked towards Chen Yuechuan, only to find him deliberately lowering his head and shifting his gaze away. What are you looking at? If it wasn't for Brother Yuechuan's generosity, do you think you could be standing here? Seeing Chen Yuechuan remain silent, Chen Muhe became more brazen, proudly lifting her chin. Don't you get it? Brother Yuechuan loves me the most. You're just an interloper. Before I could respond, the crowd around us became agitated and began to point at Chen Muhe and voice their condemnation. How can someone speak so maliciously? Such a lack of manners. Finally breaking his silence, Chen Yuechuan frowned slightly, his voice tinged with displeasure. That's enough. There's a limit to throwing a tantrum. With just that sentence, I couldn't help but regard Chen Yuechuan more highly. With a few casual words, he managed to turn Chen Muhe's taunts into mere petulant complaints, thereby defusing the crowd's criticism. Upon hearing this, Chen Muhe stuck out her tongue and rubbed her head against Chen Yuechuan. Brother Yuechuan, I'll listen to whatever you say. Looking at Mr. and Mrs. Chen, they seemed indifferent, as if the matter didn't concern them. I wasn't surprised at all. They hadn't liked me for a day or two. How could I not know what their attitude would be? Their initial attempt to intervene was merely for the sake of appearances. Somewhat anxiously, Chen Muhe tugged at Chen Yuechuan's sleeve. Brother, shouldn't we hurry up? It wouldn't be good to miss the auspicious hour. Chen Yuechuan's gaze flickered and he glanced at me, seemingly seeking my opinion. I smiled lightly, my voice calm. I have no objections, but just be careful. Some people may appear tender and gentle, but who knows how much deceit they hide. In the sunlight, the fox's tail will always show. I turned my gaze to Chen Muhe. Isn't that right, little sister Chen Muhe? Chen Muhe was momentarily stunned, then, seconds later, became furious, pointing at my face and shrieking, You wretch, who are you calling a vixen? Enough, Chen Yuechuan sternly reprimanded, his face turning grave as he looked at Chen Muhe. If you overstep again, don't blame me for not showing you any face. With tears welling up in her eyes, Chen Muhe reluctantly lowered her head, shaking Chen Yuechuan's arm. I understand. At the same time, she cast a resentful glance at me, the anger in her eyes clearly visible. If looks could kill, I would have died many times over. I smiled faintly and walked away cleanly. To the onlookers, my departure seemed awkward and defeated. But little did they know, my body trembled with excitement as I took the first step towards a new life. As for Chen Yuechuan, let whoever wants him, have him. I went to my room to change my clothes. As I got up to leave, I inadvertently walked into a scene where a couple was intimately sharing a toast, their eyes brimming with deep affection as if only the two of them existed in that moment. I glanced at them briefly and then continued walking towards the exit. At that moment, Chen Yuechuan was affectionately cradling Chen Mia's head, catching a glimpse of my figure leaving. His eyebrows lifted in response. He quickly stepped down from the stage and grabbed my arm. Where are you going? I turned around calmly and replied, I'm going home. There's nothing left for me here. Upon hearing this, Chen Yuechuan's expression showed a hint of guilt. He gently tapped my palm a few times. Don't worry. I will make it up to you in the future. Before I could respond, a shadow suddenly rushed over, throwing itself into Chen Yuechuan's arms while forcefully pushing me. Behind me were steps about a meter high. Instantly, my world went dark as I felt dizzy and then fell hard onto the ground. Excruciating pain emanated from my abdomen, and I lay there crying out in agony. Chen Yuechuan's face turned pale as he pushed Chen Miu aside and rushed to help me up. Are you alright? Did you hurt yourself anywhere? As his familiar scent reached me, I felt nauseous. Pushing him away, I stood up shakily with a pale face, clutching my abdomen and forcing a smile. Go on with your wedding. Don't worry about me. Xin Zhuxin, Chen Yuechuan spoke sternly, his gaze slightly displeased. I know you're blaming me in your heart, but now is not the time to be willful. I'm taking you to rest. I didn't say a word, just stared blankly at my belly. In my past life, I had experienced this persistent pain before, right before a miscarriage, and now, I was pregnant again. I had a premonition. This child might not survive. For some reason, I felt a sudden sense of relief. Better that the child never be born into such a cruel world than to suffer here. Indeed, this was the last thing I could do for him as a mother. From afar, Chen Miu's crying drew everyone's attention. Chen Yuechuan hesitated for a moment between me and Chen Miu, but eventually, he firmly walked over to Chen Miu. I let out a self-deprecating laugh, looking somewhat desolate. Even though I knew the outcome, I couldn't help but feel sad for myself. 5 years of love, yet I lost to an adopted daughter who appeared halfway through. How ridiculous. At that moment, Chen Miu was sitting on the ground, gently sobbing. Her moist eyes shimmered with tears, and her body trembled slightly, a sight that would make anyone feel pity. I didn't mean it. I just wanted to hear what they were talking about. She suddenly stood up and rushed over to Chen's parents. Mom, Dad. You know I had no ill intentions. Chen's parents looked at each other and nodded. Of course we believe you. As the adopted daughter of the Chen family, her lively and adorable personality was much loved by Chen's parents. Even though she was not their biological daughter, she was treated as such. Seeing this, Chen Miu bowed her head in feigned grievance, but her heart was bursting with joy. Casting a triumphant glance at me, I wasn't paying attention to what was happening there. Nor did I have the heart to care. Hello, ambulance, I'm at the Jingren Hotel. Please come over. I'm not feeling well. After the call, I finally breathed a sigh of relief and sat down by the roadside, looking towards the hotel. Chen's parents and Chen Yuechuan were all consoling Chen Miu, as if she was the real victim. Seeing this scene, I wasn't surprised, just stared blankly at the distant white sky. It felt good to breathe fresh air again. Lost in my thoughts, Chen Yuechuan came over again. His voice softer. Chen Miu told me, she didn't mean it, and she feels bad seeing you hurt, and besides, she's still young, don't be too hard on her. Hearing this, I almost laughed. Yes, she's a year younger than me, so she gets all the care and attention, and even when she makes mistakes, she doesn't have to take responsibility. Chen Yuechuan saw that I was silent and wanted to say something more, but suddenly someone shouted, Miss Chen Miu is feeling unwell. And he immediately turned his head and rushed towards her. Just then, the ambulance arrived. My eyes brightened, and I staggered towards the ambulance. The pain in my lower abdomen was getting worse, and I didn't know how much longer I could endure. Who called the ambulance? The nurse stepped out of the vehicle. Looking around, I spoke out loud, it's me, I'm bleedy. Before I could finish, Mrs. Chen suddenly rushed over and forcefully pushed me aside, exclaiming, here, my daughter is in unbearable pain, quickly take us to the hospital. Already weak, my legs gave way, and I collapsed to the ground. Furious, I was about to retort when I saw Mrs. Chen looking at me sideways with a nonchalant expression. Why call an ambulance if you're fine? Such a big fuss over nothing. Let's save it for Chen Miu. Chen Yuechuan, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. I see nothing serious with you. Just go home and rest. I laughed out of sheer frustration, pointing at Chen Miu, who was feigning illness. Why should the ambulance I called be used for her? How dare you, Mrs. Chen's face darkened with anger, and she slapped me across the face. Who gave you the right to talk back to us? Caught off guard by the force, I stumbled backward. My head hitting the ground, blood trickled from my forehead. Looking up at Chen Yuechuan, I realized he was silently helping Chen Miu into the ambulance. From beginning to end, his eyes were only on Chen Miu, not sparing me a glance. Despite being prepared, witnessing his heartlessness once more still made my heart ache. Haha, is this really the partner I chose to be with for life? I managed a wry smile. Lying in the middle of the road, watching the ambulance drive away, my vision blurring, vaguely. I heard someone nearby calling out anxiously, "Someone come quick, this lady, she's lost a lot of blood." I wasn't sure how long I was unconscious. When I came to, a face was staring intently at me. Ah, I jumped, instinctively pulling back. That face, so familiar, Lu Huiqiu, once the most fervent admirer who had covered the sports field with roses to confess his love for me. Sadly, I had chosen Chen Yuechuan instead, and Lu faded from my memory, yet, here he was, unexpectedly before me. "Don't move, you're still very weak." Lu Huiqiu's eyes flashed with panic, quickly replaced by concern as he steadied my shoulders. "How are you here?" My surprise overshadowed the physical pain. In my memory, he had moved far away for work after graduation. It made no sense for him to be here. As he was about to speak, hurried footsteps sounded from behind. "Is Xin Zhuxin here?" It was Chen Yuechuan's voice, tinged with urgency. The door burst open, and seeing me, Chen Yuechuan's face lit up. "Xin Zhuxin, you are really here." Lu Huiqiu's expression turned cold. He stood up and without a word, punched Chen Yuechuan in the face. Bang! Caught off guard, Chen Yuechuan stumbled back out of the room. "How dare you show your face here? I trusted you with Xin Zhuxin, and this is how you treat her, you beast. I'd be doing a public service by killing you today." Immediately, I heard Chen Yuechuan's furious roar from the hallway. "Lu Huiqiu, what the hell are you doing here? What business is it of yours? As her friend, it's my duty to stand up for her." I turned on my phone, only to find it flooded with advertisements, all about one thing: the Chen siblings, Chen Yuechuan and Chen Miu, tied the knot, and it turns out they are not related by blood, a match made in heaven, a handsome man and a beautiful woman. Their wedding was a grand affair. I chuckled and turned off my phone, as expected, given how much Chen's parents disliked me. If it weren't for Chen Mia's unexpected suicide in my previous life, I would never have had the chance to be a bride. The noise of fighting outside grew louder. I tried to intervene, but was interrupted by a violent fit of coughing. "Xin Zhuxin," Lu Huiqiu was the first to hear me, rushing over and grabbing my hand. "Are you alright?" Soon after, Chen Miu came over in a disheveled state, his gaze fixed on Lu Huiqiu's firm grip on my hand, his face darkening instantly. "Let go of her." "She's my wife," he demanded. Lu Huiqiu, chin up, unafraid of his glare, retorted, "You don't deserve to be her husband." Hearing this, Chen Yuechuan scoffed, looking at me. "Tell our old friend here, who is your husband?" With a steady gaze, I responded, "I have no husband." At this, Chen Yuechuan's smile faltered, his eyebrows knitting together. "We've had our wedding. All that's left is the marriage certificate. Could there be anyone else but me? Are you sure?" I suddenly raised my voice. "Your bride, is she me?" Chen Yuechuan's expression turned ugly. He stammered for a while. "I didn't know about these things at first. My intention was just to make Chen Miu happy." He held my hand, earnestly saying, "I can give you everything you want." I lightly toyed with the pristine bedsheet, looking at him with a half-smile. "Are you sure you can make Chen Miu give up everything for me?" I clearly saw a moment of hesitation and evasion in Chen Yuechuan's eyes. This, after all. We just got married. If we declare now that everything was fake, it would cause significant damage to the Chen family's reputation, and with the recent hype over our wedding, the stocks have soared. Just get through this period, and the position of Mrs. Chen will still be yours. He continued his relentless babble, unaware of Lu Huiqiu's increasingly darkening expression. "Get the hell out." Lu Huiqiu, eyes reddening, roared as he grabbed Chen Yuechuan's collar. "After all is said and done, you still care about that little mistress of yours. To mess with Xin Zhuxin, you'll have to step over my dead body." Chen Yuechuan's face darkened. He grabbed Lu Huiqiu by the throat, a hint of disdain flashing in his eyes. "You were never my equal, and you still aren't." I cooled down, shouting, "Enough, let go." Both men obediently released their grips. Suddenly, Chen Yuechuan received a call from Chen Miu, hesitating for a moment. He chose to answer it on the spot. Immediately, a whiny, saccharine voice echoed through the room. "Brother Chen Yuechuan, where are you? I feel so miserable." Chen Yuechuan's face softened. He cooed, "Behave, sister, I'll get you some food. I'll be right back." Lu Huiqiu looked at Chen Yuechuan with a mocking, disdainful glance, scoffing, "Go attend to your little mistress before she starts crying." Chen Yuechuan's expression chilled. "That's my sister. watch your words or I won't be polite." With that, he looked at me, walking backwards as he left. "I'll be back soon, you rest well and think about what I said." Also, his gaze lingered on Lu Huiqiu for a second, his voice cold. "Remember whose child you are carrying. I don't want to see irrelevant people around here anymore." Hearing his undisguised threat, my expression didn't change much. After all, the child was no longer there. Those words were pointless. After Chen Yuechuan left, Lu Huiqiu remained silent for a long time before he slowly spoke. "It seems he doesn't know about your miscarriage." I nodded slightly, looked up at him, and said, "Thank you for saving me." "It's nothing, it's what I should do." Lu Huiqiu seemed somewhat distracted as he responded, "You seem like you have something to say." Not at all." Lu Huiqiu quickly shook his head. Watching Lu Huiqiu's demeanor, I suddenly found it somewhat amusing. "Actually, you're really bad at hiding your feelings. I do have something I want to say." He glanced at me, but quickly averted his gaze when our eyes met. "Chen Yuechuan treats you like that? Even bluntly saying he's just playing with you. You're such a good girl. How can you let someone like him tarnish you?" He practically gritted his teeth as he spoke the last sentence. I looked up at him and said, "So you're saying I should choose you, right?" As soon as the words left my mouth, Lu Huiqiu's face turned visibly red. "Yes." He suddenly clenched his teeth, his expression resolute as he looked at me. "If Chen Yuechuan were good to you, I'd accept my defeat gracefully, without regrets, but he doesn't see you at all, so, can I have another chance to pursue you?" Seeing his anxious and hopeful eyes, I was momentarily lost in thought. His love for me, I only realized its depth when I was on the brink of death. In a past life, I was cruelly forced to kneel at Chen Miu's grave. It was Lu Huiqiu who forcefully pulled me away, ignoring the swirling rumors and slander. After my death, he inflicted a severe injury on Chen Yuechuan and finally committed suicide by cutting his wrists, dying beside me. I can never forget the look of despair in his eyes when he saw me die. At that thought, my heart ached, and I nodded heavily. Lu Huiqiu suddenly clenched his hands tightly, his eyes reddening with emotion. He lunged forward, grabbing my hands again. "What did you say? You agree?" I smiled warmly and nodded again. "Of course, this time, I choose you." From that day on, Lu Huiqiu stayed by my side, taking great care of me. Chen Yuechuan, who always said he'd be back soon, was nowhere to be seen. I watched the busy figure beside me and felt a warmth in my heart. Unlike Chen Yuechuan, Lu Huiqiu never just talked without action. He took care of everything himself, and even when he didn't understand something, he would humbly ask the nurses. Occasionally, I would tease him, saying he didn't act like a wealthy heir at all. More than once, I asked myself why I had originally chosen Chen Yuechuan over Lu Huiqiu. Looking back, the brave decision I once made was terribly wrong. 3 days later, Lu Huiqiu brought me news. Chen Miu was pregnant. Although the Chen family kept it under wraps, Lu Huiqiu's resources still made it possible to find out. "This damn beast. He already had you and still messed around everywhere," Lu Huiqiu said angrily, pulling at his hair. I listened in silence, saying nothing. Honestly, I felt calmer than I expected. Perhaps, having been reborn, I had already seen the darkness and coldness in Chen Yuechuan's heart, so nothing he did could surprise me anymore. Still, I hadn't expected that they had been involved for quite some time already. What was I to him then, and why hold such a grand wedding to marry me? I couldn't quite understand and shook my head slightly, but saw Lu Huiqiu sitting in the chair, visibly annoyed. I couldn't help but find it amusing and looked up at him. "Why are you so angry?" Lu Huiqiu's face reddened. "Because he disrespected you." I smiled, beckoned him with my finger. "Come here." Lu Huiqiu was momentarily stunned but obediently leaned forward. If others saw this scene, they would probably be shocked. The sole heir of the prestigious Lu family, a wealthy young master, was being completely submissive in front of a woman, even showing a pleasing expression. As I met his puzzled gaze, I whispered in his ear, "Just respect me from now on." Lu Huiqiu's body shook violently, and he stared at me in shock as a blush crept over his cheeks. You agree to be with me?" His voice was distorted with excitement, and his eyes were bloodshot. I smiled and brushed the hair from my forehead. "I didn't say that yet. Let's see how you do." He didn't say anything but hugged me tightly. "Thank you," I smiled back, extending my arms, "and thank you for not despising me." A week later, I was discharged from the hospital, leaving with Lu Huiqiu by my side. Unexpectedly, at the entrance, we ran into Chen Yuechuan coming our way. I glanced briefly at Chen Miu, who was clinging intimately to him, and quickly looked away. Only then did Chen Yuechuan notice me, his face stiffening as he instinctively tried to pull Chen Miu away from him, but she clung tightly to his arm, refusing to let go. "Shin Jushin, I came to see you." I looked straight ahead, ignoring him. I can't afford the concern of the young master of the Chen family. Hearing my sarcastic tone, Qin Yuechuan frowned. Are you still mad at me? I smiled. How dare I, sir, especially since you are about to be a father. If I'm not mistaken, you must be here for her checkup, I said, glancing at Chen Miu's stomach. At these words, Qin Yuechuan's face changed drastically, and he stared at me. You know. I didn't respond but turned to Lu Huiqiu. Let's go. Wait. Qin Yuechuan panicked, pushing Lu Huiqiu aside. Don't touch my wife. Then he looked at Chen Miu. You go inside first. I have something to handle. I'll join you in a bit. I don't want to. Chen Miu pouted, shaking her head dissatisfiedly. Why bother talking to this old woman? Now she knows. So what? My baby is a million times better than hers. Qin Yuechuan's expression turned cold, and he snapped. I told you to go back. Can't you understand? Startled. Chen Miu could only purse her lips and walk inside with a look of resentment. Shinjuxin, Qin Yuechuan quickly walked over, blocking my way. Listen to me. I was momentarily blinded by folly. That's why I made a mistake. But I made her take medicine right away. Who knew she didn't take it? His face full of agony. Only the child in your stomach is truly mine. Qin Yuechuan's. I don't care about the others. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. I don't care. So why did you rush to the hospital 3 times in just 1 week? Qin Yuechuan's face turned sour, his expression drooping as he struggled to explain himself. Enough. Don't come looking for me anymore. Just go and live a good life with your little sister and lover. I waved my hand dismissively and walked away again. As we brushed past each other, Qin Yuechuan suddenly growled. Shinjuxin, even if you really don't love me anymore, at least care about your mother. She's getting old and it's hard for her to get around. I stiffened and turned to glare at Qin Yuechuan angrily. In my past life, he used my mother to blackmail me, making it impossible for me to leave, and now, he was trying to use the same tactic. Qin Yuechuan's expression calmed as he gently lifted my chin. Come back to me, will you? This time, I'll treat you right, treat our child right. A few seconds later, I smiled sweetly. Okay, I agree. Hearing this, Qin Yuechuan looked triumphantly at Lu Huiqiu and said, You've lost again this time. Lu Huiqiu just shook his head with a smile, not saying a word, and quietly stepped back to leave. Of course, he wasn't upset because we had already arranged for someone to take my mother away. Qin Yuechuan smiled slightly and extended his hand. Let's go. Obediently, I took his hand. I'll listen to you. And so, I returned to the Chen family once again. This time was different. Officially, Chen Miu was still the lady of the house, and I was merely relegated to a secluded side room, cut off from the world. He always bent down to cradle my face, gently saying, Just wait a little longer, it will all be over soon, and my behavior increasingly pleased him. No complaints, no fuss, as if I truly had returned to his side, but I knew this was just the beginning. Some were more impatient than I. Finally, after another one of Qin Yuechuan's visits, Chen Miu kicked the door open. Oh, the old woman is really delighting in secret here. Chen Miu crossed her arms and looked at me with a mocking expression. How does it feel to be the other woman? What do you think? If I call the reporters over now, would Qin Yuechuan kick you out to save the family's face? I frowned and looked at Chen Miu coldly. Viper-hearted describes you perfectly. Chen Miu covered her mouth and giggled. Thank you for the compliment, but this should be our last meeting. You can't beat me, old woman. As her words fell, suddenly the roaring sounds of many cars approached. Before I could get up, numerous reporters burst through the door, swarming inside. Miss, someone claims you are the young master of the Chen family's mistress. Is this true? Why did you choose to be the other woman after the young master of the Chen family's wedding? Does your conscience not hurt? I remained calm, watching everything unfold with a detached gaze. I didn't respond to any of the questions. It was clear that all of this was meticulously orchestrated by Chen Mush. Whatever I said would be pointless. Within 5 minutes, Qin Yuechuan hurried over, his face shadowed with an uncontrollable gloom. Good day, young Master Chen, may I ask? Immediately, all the reporters shifted their focus and swarmed around Qin Yuechuan, blocking his path, facing the barrage of questions from the reporters. Qin Yuechuan took a deep breath, his eyes briefly showing a hint of guilt towards me before it vanished. Ladies and gentlemen, it's true that this house is owned by the Chen family, but this woman trespassed on her own. She has never been my wife, he declared, with a slight smile. He put his arm around the slender waist of Chen Mush. This lady, however, is my wife, the sole mistress of the Chen family. As soon as he finished speaking, the reporters erupted in gasps and envious looks. Chen Mush glanced over with a triumphant look, prompting a reporter to thrust a microphone towards me. "Miss, is there anything you would like to say?" I slightly curved my lips, wearing a mocking smile. "Chen Yuechuan, I've seen right through you." With those words, I picked up my belongings which I had already packed and walked away, watching my retreating figure. Chen Yuechuan's face turned pale, but faced with the reporter's cameras, he could only muster a forced smile. For the sake of the Chen family, that was all he could do. "Is everything ready?" I placed my backpack in the trunk and asked softly. Behind the wheel, Lu Weiqiu took off his sunglasses, revealing a refreshing smile. "Don't worry, everything is set." I smiled slightly and pulled out the plane ticket to Australia. "In that case, let's set off for our new life. How did you think of all this on the road?" Lu Weiqiu couldn't help but ask curiously. I shook my head and smiled. Because I knew Chen Yuechuan wouldn't let me go, and I was even more certain that Chen Mush wouldn't just watch me take what belongs to her. It all boils down to desire. "Oh, by the way, not many people know about this departure, right?" Lu Huichou nodded. "Don't worry, I left very discreetly, nobody will know where we went. As for the person who faked your death, I've made sure everything will go smoothly." I nodded slightly, gazing ahead somewhat abstractedly. If I didn't torment him this way, how could I compensate for the suffering I endured in my past life? Lu Huichou paused. "What did you say?" "Nothing," I smiled, offering no explanation. The past life felt like a dream, and given a chance to choose again by fate, I wouldn't make the same mistakes. It's likely that Chen Yuechuan has also seen the miscarriage report by now. The next morning, every media outlet featured videos of the Chen family heir going mad. He used all his connections to search for me globally, only to find my gruesomely disfigured body in the ruins. He even knelt at the doorstep of the house I once lived in, continuously bowing in apology. Chen Mush was also forced by him to kneel from dawn until dusk. When Chen Yuechuan's parents tried to take Chen Mush away, he stabbed them severely, and they were admitted into the ICU. 3 days later, Chen Mush, driven mad by torture, smashed her head against a rock and died instantly. Chen Yuechuan was sentenced to life imprisonment for intentional homicide, doomed to spend his life behind bars. Seeing the news, I just smiled faintly, unconcerned. From now on, I must put myself first. Story 2. After my tragic death, my utterly despised son risked his life to avenge me. My husband, who had lived a carefree life indulging in pleasures, succeeded in bringing down the rival corporation. He then committed suicide while clutching my urn, my spirit, floating in the air. Spun in disbelief, when I opened my eyes again, I found myself scolding my son for only achieving second place in his grade, while simultaneously smashing my husband's collection of luxury watches. Let's pause the malevolent act. I need to switch roles. The floor was littered with broken watch faces and torn exam papers. With a trembling butler and servants standing by, I silently placed the last watch back in its place, changing my grip on my son from a pinch to a gentle stroke. Jiang Qizhao took a step back, avoiding my hand. His delicate yet youthful face showed a hint of coldness. He stooped to pick up pieces of the torn exam paper, clutching them in his hand before silently turning to leave. I stared at his retreating figure for a few seconds, then raised my voice. "Jiang Qizhao." He paused on the steps but did not turn around. "There's a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow." "Right, I happen to be free, I'll attend," I said. "No need." Jiang Qizhao refused without hesitation and continued upstairs. The words stuck in my throat, and I sighed internally, scanning the chaotic scene before ordering someone to clean it up. Then, I made a phone call. After a long wait, the call was answered leisurely, with a noisy background. "What is it?" The man's voice was casual, with a playful lilt, humming a tune, epitomizing a carefree playboy. Yet, it was he who, after my death, abandoned all his amusements and insanely drove my stepmother's family corporation to bankruptcy and ruin. My thoughts drifted back to the scene I witnessed as a mere spirit. My typically flirtatious and lazy husband, Jiang Ji, had red-rimmed eyes and bloodless lips. Devoid of his usual frivolity, he decisively made everyone who had wronged me pay a painful price. I could understand these actions. After all, no matter how strained our relationships were, I was still the lady of the Jiang family, representing their honor. But there was really no need for Jiang Ji to die for me. After avenging me, he stood by the seaside where we had our wedding, holding my urn. He stood there for hours as the wind erased his usual dignified demeanor, leaving him desolate. At that moment, my spirit floated nearby, scoffing, thinking, "Now he finally shows some conscience after his days of drinking and flirting." Then, under my astonished gaze, he walked step by step into the deep sea with my urn in his arms, without looking back, lonely and resolute, until the waves surged and swallowed him, leaving no trace behind. Only my trembling spirit remained. This foolishly sentimental president, polluting the waters, would surely look horrendous when his body surfaced by the quiet seaside at night. My lonely spirit seemed trapped in place, feeling as if a salty, damp breeze had swept over, disheveling my hair and unsettling my heart. Upon opening my eyes again, I was back to the time when I reigned supreme in the Jiang household. I clutched my phone, pressing it to my ear, listening to Jiang Ji's indifferent voice. Do you want money, or what? I pursed my lips. I smashed your watches. Jiang Ji just acknowledged with an O, seemingly unconcerned. Okay, then I'll hang up. Before he could hang up, I quickly blurted out, where are you? On the other end, there was a pause, and after a moment, all the background noise and music ceased, leaving a silence so deep that one could hear a pin drop. Why, are you thinking of getting a divorce? Zhang's initially lazy tone suddenly turned chilly. If you get divorced, where will you go? Back to the Ji family. Do you think they'll treat you well? Did you have another fight with A Zhao? Don't forget. You still have my investment in your studio. Darling, shut up now. And I can pretend I didn't hear anything. I was quite shocked as Jiang rattled off this string of remarks. I really didn't know how he could jump from my asking his location to talking about divorce. But I knew he was always like this. Beneath his privileged exterior was a condescending indifference. He could speak touching love words emotionlessly with his affectionate peach blossom eyes, and just as easily discard past lovers. Playing through the human world, passing unscathed even amidst a cluster of flowers, and I've never been one to have a good temper. As others in our circle would put it, I'm a domineering tigress, wreaking havoc. Especially after I fell ill, I became even more of a torment. Otherwise, I wouldn't have caused such unrest in the Jiang family in my previous life. My good temper just now was due to being moved by their actions after my death, which made me want to start over and treat them more gently this time around, but it seemed that no one appreciated that. Fine, let's divorce now. Take your son and get out, I said with a cold laugh, intentionally being contradictory. As soon as the words left my mouth, I locked eyes with Jiang Qizhao, who was coming downstairs with books in hand. His dark eyes betrayed no emotion. He looks half like his father and half like me, but his personality resembles neither of us. I wanted to see their reaction to the mention of divorce. 3. Do you want to divorce? Jiang Qizhao stood not far from me, his tone calm. He seemed mature for his age, but children who grow up without parental love do tend to mature earlier. I watched for any change in Jiang Qizhao's expression, subtly raising an eyebrow. Your father doesn't love me, and your affection for me is even less than that for your tutor. What reason do I have to stay with the Jiang family? No. His expression didn't change much, but his words hesitated for a moment. After a long pause, Jiang Qizhao spoke softly. My dad won't agree. That's not up to him, I replied. The living room fell silent for a while. Is this because I won't let you attend the parent-teacher conference, so you want a divorce? Jiang Qizhao suddenly said. I was stunned. Like father, like son, both have such peculiar ways of thinking. Jiang Qizhao looked down, as if making up his mind. You can attend if you want. Me, I suddenly understood why Jiang Qizhao reacted this way. He probably thought I would embarrass him at the parent-teacher conference and didn't really want me to attend, but he wanted even less for me to divorce Jiang Ji. My heart sank. Mom just wants to know how you're doing in school lately. After a long silence, I softened my voice, taking a step towards Jiang Qizhao. His lips parted, as if he wanted to say something, but just then, the villa's main door opened. Jiang Qizhao and I turned to look as Jiang Ji's tall figure stood framed against the backlight. As Jiang Ji walked in from the doorway, the kiss marks on his neck became increasingly visible. The atmosphere in the villa dropped further. Jiang Qizhao stared at Jiang Ji's neck for several seconds before walking past him without even a word of greeting. Heading straight outside, I instructed the butler to have someone follow him closely. The butler smiled and said, It's actually time for the young master's tutoring session, and the driver is already waiting at the door. I paused for a moment, nodded, and retracted my worries. When Jiang Ji's gaze met mine, he lightly lifted his index finger, and everyone else in the villa left, disappearing from view. Where did you get the courage to think about divorce? Jiang Ji loosened his collar, his casual demeanor seeming like an offhand question. I couldn't help but fix my gaze firmly on him. It was inquisitive, questioning, and also strange. Despite being such a cynical person, why would he? After my death, Jiang Ji lazily leaned back on the sofa, arms crossed as he surveyed me, his tone still frivolous. Darling, remember, the banquet is tomorrow night. The banquet tomorrow night would be attended by all the prominent families of Haicheng, including my own family. My family found it odd. They hoped I could firmly tie Jiang Ji to our family yet didn't wish for my happiness. You have enough darlings outside, no need to waste your breath calling me darling, I smiled, not taking his bait, and sat down beside him. My words were a casual probe. When my soul aimlessly wandered after my death, I saw many scenes I had never witnessed before. For instance, the numerous lovers around Jiangji seemed to hint at some hidden truths. But the real truth still needed to be uncovered by me. Jiangji's expression flickered unnaturally for a moment. He glanced at me, and the smile at the corner of his mouth slightly faded. Are you jealous? He sounded self-mocking, almost sarcastic, his fingertips lightly tapping on his thigh. I casually placed my hand on his thigh too. The man beside me immediately stiffened. Jiangji, husband. I provocatively curled my lips, even though the home flower isn't as fragrant as the wild ones, but... Jiangji almost scrambled to his feet. He took a deep breath and looked down at me. Jiji, have you lost your mind? Jiangji's ears turned red. But how could someone so seasoned in the ways of love be so easily embarrassed? I smirked, continuously speaking without pause. The kids are already so big. What's wrong with touching you a bit? Are you too precious to be touched? We're not even divorced yet. Is it illegal for a wife to touch her husband? The air was thick with tension. In my previous life, I always spoke in this tone at the Jiang family. Only this time, there was a hint of teasing involved. Chastity is the best dowry a man can have. In my last life, I always felt disgusted by Jiangji's infidelities, naturally showing him no kindness, and even less desire to be close to him. But now, it seems the previous intelligence was slightly off, thus, my attitude could afford some adjustment. Jiangji repeated, "You've gone mad." Now not only were his ears red, but his neck also had a slight pink tinge. Just when I thought Jiangji would storm off in embarrassment, the butler hurried over, holding a phone. "Mr. Jiang, madam, there's been an incident with the young master." I furrowed my brow, exchanged a glance with Jiangji, and then we both decided to head to the school together. Once in the car, Jiangji spoke on the phone with his secretary, found out the reason. I looked out the window at the swiftly passing scenery while listening to Jiangji's indifferent and off-key words. Hitting someone. Just because I've donated a few buildings to the school they start showing off. TSK, making such a fuss. I grimaced as the corner of my mouth twitched sharply. The comment was practically pointing directly at me, yet, Jiang Qizhao was eerily mature and calm, lacking the innocent demeanor typical of other 8-year-olds. I wanted to retort but held back. I was puzzled about what could have provoked Jiang Qizhao to hit someone. The mother of the child who was hit viciously grabbed Jiang Qizhao's ear and swung him towards me. "Didn't your parents teach you anything? You're so young and already fighting." After she spoke, she seemed unsatisfied and slapped Jiang Qizhao across the face, the sound crisp and clear. I had just stepped into the principal's office when I witnessed the scene and heard her words. The next second, our eyes met, then. In another second, I strode forward and swiftly slapped her twice. She was so shocked that she forgot to retaliate. If it's Jiang Qizhao's fault, we'll find a way to apologize and resolve the issue. But regardless, as an adult, you shouldn't be hitting a child directly. I spoke without hesitation, ignoring the astonished looks from the principal and teachers in the office. Moreover, from what I had just overheard in Jiang Qizhao's phone conversation, it was the other child who had insulted him first. Jiang Qizhao stood in front of the woman as she tried to retaliate, coldly calling out, "Jiang Qizhao." Jiang Qizhao's lips were tightly sealed, and after a long while, he said, "He told me my parents never attend parent-teacher meetings because my dad has a new wife and my mom is crazy. He also said that those who are good at math don't live long, and I might die in middle school. Then my whole family would die. My dad would be stabbed to death by his mistress, and my mom would die from eating rat poison." Me, Jiang Qizhao. I met the gaze of the child hiding in the corner, expressionless. I clenched my fist and took a step forward, but other teachers quickly held me back. Calm down, calm down." Perhaps my expression was too frightening, causing the child to burst into tears, and his mother exclaimed in fear, "Didn't you say you shouldn't take your anger out on a child? Damn your foul mouth. You're the one without parents." I glared fiercely at the child, my anger reaching its peak. The child's crying grew louder. In the ensuing chaos, I saw Jiang Qizhao making a serious phone call, seemingly busy with something else even at this time. Just as I was about to scold him too, he slightly curled his lip, first glancing at Jiang Qizhao then at me, saying, "I've contacted someone to demolish the newly constructed buildings." Me, Jiang Qizhao. The conversation was still nonsensical. It was hopeless, the principal, trying to lighten the mood yet clearly not believing it, since it was impossible for newly constructed buildings to be demolished. "Mr. Jiang, please don't be angry. I think both parties are at fault here. after all, Qizhao started the fight. The preparation for the new cafeteria is halted, Jiang said calmly, dropping the last sentence. The principal, who was just playing dumb, suddenly widened his eyes, jumped up from his chair, and rushed to the child. This is corrupting the school's atmosphere. Expelled, expelled. The child's mother stood agape, incredulous. My child is so young, and you're stooping to his level. Besides, my child didn't hit anyone, he just said a few words. The principal's office was noisy and chaotic. Amid the noise, Jiang Qizhao seemed detached, his hands casually in his pockets, his back straight, his smile faint. I couldn't understand him. My gaze moved from him down to Jiang Qizhao. He just quietly watched me. His thick eyelashes fluttering, his pupils dark but no longer empty. After a while, I lifted my lips slightly, smiling at him. Jiang Qizhao didn't smile, he just kept looking at me, his delicate little face marked with a red handprint. Zhao, I called softly. He froze. This was his nickname, the one I used when he was very young. Back then, I wasn't yet malicious or sinful. Zhao, I called out again. The overlapping sounds of a child's crying, his mother's curses and breakdown, the teacher's attempts to mediate, and the principal's anger filled the small office, almost to the point of explosion. Yet, for some reason, I clearly heard Jiang Qizhao's faint response. After returning home, I sat in front of the dressing table, staring at a row of psychiatric medications for a long time. Then, I pushed all of them into the trash can. Hearing a slight noise, I turned my head. Jiang Qizhao stood at the door. He was still too young to be smoking, not very tall, holding a glass of milk, quietly watching me. He didn't speak, and as usual, Jiang Ji wasn't coming home tonight. The silence in the villa was eerie. I sighed and opened my arms to Jiang Qizhao. Do you want a hug from Mom? He looked at me for a long while, then finally walked over, placed the milk on the table, and without a word, turned and left. Just then, my phone screen lit up. Looking down, it was a video of Jiang Ji in a bar, surrounded by bright lights and festivities. In the video, his laughter was captivating, the center of attention. My informant sent me a message. Are you interested in him? Although he's rich, his family keeps tight reins on him. You might not get a chance with him. There are plenty of handsome guys here. We even have male models. Why don't you come over? I can introduce you to some good ones. I replied. I heard he's quite the playboy, and I'm pretty good looking myself. Why couldn't something happen? The informant replied, just on the surface. Those few words were brief but loaded with information. After that statement from the bar manager, no matter how much I pressed, he refused to disclose more. As per our agreement, I transferred the final payment and wrote, I'll be there soon. Find some good-looking male models. Big sister, try this. A brother playfully fed me a grape, surrounded by other male models who were also whispering sweet nothings. I bit into the grape, its sweetness bursting in my mouth, counting down in my mind. 3, 2, 1. I looked up, locking eyes with Jiang Ji, who walked out from a second-floor VIP box, his peach blossom eyes slightly cool. He was followed by a laughing group. Upon seeing me, their expressions changed instantly, and the noise around them quieted. One of the male models next to me leaned close, whispering sweet nothings in my ear. I kept my gaze on Jiang Ji, even waving at him with a smile. Jiang Ji strode over with long steps, stopping in front of me. Ji. His smile was faint, his voice even fainter. Hi, hubby, I casually said. At that, the male models around me immediately showed shocked expressions, stumbling over their words. Mr. Jiang, Mrs. Jiang. Jiang Ji was a major shareholder of the bar and a frequent visitor, almost universally recognized there. I stood up, straightening his collar. Husband, what a coincidence to run into you here. What are you doing following me here? Seeing my nonchalant attitude, Jiang's slender fingers gripped my wrist tightly. I chuckled lightly. Isn't it obvious? Just teasing you. Are you really considering a divorce? Jiang looked down at me, his eyes questioning. What, huh? How did we end up on the topic of divorce again? What is he thinking? But I decided to go along with it. You don't love me, and neither does our son. I might as well set you both free sooner rather than later. As I spoke, I held Jiang tightly, watching his expression closely. He paused for a moment. Do you need me to love you? His tone was very calm like a stagnant pond. Gone was his usual cynicism and frivolity. I suddenly realized that in fact, Jiang was still like his old self, showing another side of him. The Jiang before me now gave me the feeling of the time he stood by the seaside holding my urn in his previous life, a calmness that bordered on utter despair. Looking into his amber eyes, I said earnestly, pausing at each word, I do. After that, without waiting for his response, I yanked his hand and pulled him outside. The bar manager watched us, dumbfounded. As we walked, I called back to the manager. Charge all my expenses to Mr. Zhang's account. Jiang let me lead him without resisting. I dragged him to my car and pushed him in, sitting on his lap. I fiercely grabbed his chin. I hate dishonest men. Tell me, have you touched anyone else? Jiang looked stunned. Silence filled the car for a long time, the air thick with the lingering smell of smoke and alcohol from us. It wasn't pleasant. I lowered my eyelids, let go of him, and rolled down the car window. No, he said. Then why do you frequent bars and let rumors spread? I seized the opportunity to press him. It's none of your business. He slightly lifted his chin, his gaze on me, but his emotions were indiscernible. I grabbed his neck with both hands and bit his lower lip hard. I am your spouse. Do you know what that means? Zhang's lips were tight, and he remained silent. I laughed out of frustration. You don't know, do you? Then let's get a divorce. After tomorrow, I will have someone draft the divorce papers. Surprisingly, he agreed to the divorce. After he spoke, I froze. Although my mind was a mess, my pride made me respond. Fine. I got off his lap, but his slender fingers instinctively gripped the root of my thigh. I didn't move. He let go and said, I'll call the driver. When I returned home, the medicine I had thrown into the trash from my makeup table was replaced with new ones, neatly arranged on the table. Jiang stood at the doorway, his silhouette shadowed, holding a book. He paused, then said, the doctor said you can't skip your medication. I was momentarily dazed. In my past life, my bipolar disorder was severe. I couldn't skip medication for even a day, but after being reborn, I didn't feel the constant pain and madness of my previous life. I lowered my eyelids, my gaze drifting over the medication I had taken countless times before. Zhao, I'm sorry. My voice was hoarse. Zhang's figure noticeably stiffened. He seemed a bit lost and helpless. I have always failed in my duties as a mother. When I became a spirit, I watched my son Jiang Qizhao desperately trying to win over my stepsister by pretending to be obedient and sweet-talking her. He almost fell victim to my power-hungry sister, who nearly got rid of this child left behind by his sister and Jiang Ji. At that time, I cried and begged Jiang Qizhao to forget about me and not seek revenge for such an incompetent mother like me, but he couldn't hear me. Now I can finally tell him in person. I'm sorry, Jiang Qizhao. Jiang Ji's voice came from not far away, casual yet oppressive. Jiang Qizhao did not move. Have you finished your homework? Jiang Ji approached, eyes lowered. Mind your own business. I stood up, took Jiang Qizhao's hand, and pulled him behind me. Jiang Ji was taken aback by my retort, but he quickly returned to his usual indifferent self. He told me, the Ji family will be attending tomorrow's banquet. I instinctively withdrew my hand. But Jiang Qizhao held it firmly. In my past life, it was the Ji family that caused my death. Despite sharing the same surname and bloodline, seeing my expression, he paused for a moment, then asked, are you going? I grimly smiled. Yes, to see those people, those who couldn't stand to see me succeed. My thoughts drifted back to a long time ago, to my previous life. Jiang Ji and I were forced to marry without any love between us, and every day was filled with hatred. In the midst of that hatred, some feelings developed. Jiang Qizhao was conceived under those circumstances. My family feared that if I had a son, my status in the Jiang family would rise significantly. My brother and sister would often whisper in my ear about Jiang Ji's frivolity and infidelity. I didn't believe them, but later, the Ji family secretly drugged me with psychotropic substances, turning me from a normal person into someone with a mental illness, irritable and prone to anger, yet also fearful and depressed. It was only after I died and followed Jiang Ji as a spirit that I saw him avenge me and watched him change into someone unrecognizable. The next day, the banquet arrived as scheduled. I wore an ivory mermaid dress, arm in arm with Jiang Ji, under the watchful eyes of the other guests in the hall. Sister! A cheerful voice called out as Ji Rulin approached me in her little heels. When we were face to face, she smiled at Jiang Ji. Brother-in-law. I smiled back and asked her, how are mom and brother? Mom wasn't feeling well, so she didn't come. She's at home taking care of dad, Ji Rulin answered, avoiding mentioning Ji Hao, because I knew that Ji Hao was currently scheming to embarrass me at this banquet, aiming to ruin my reputation. At the critical moment, Ji Rulin would step forward to attract Jiang Ji's attention. Even though everyone knew that Jiang Ji and I had a rocky marriage, they were also aware that my mental state had been significantly manipulated by their design, yet, they still wouldn't let me be. They coveted the position of Mrs. Jiang, aiming to elevate Ji Rulin. I unconsciously tightened my grip on Jiang Ji's arm. Jiang Ji glanced down at me and after a long moment, he looked away and nodded slightly at Ji Rulin. Ji Rulin's smile grew even brighter. She eagerly said to me, even though mom didn't come, she prepared a beautiful dress for you. You always say mom doesn't love you, But she really cares about you. Let me take you to the dressing room to try it on. I looked at Ji Rulin and sneered inwardly. Do you think there's something wrong with my taste? Jiangji said, lowering his gaze. The tone wasn't forceful, yet it made one's skin crawl. Ji Rulin's expression froze. What? I smiled and said. This mermaid dress I'm wearing. He helped me choose it. Ji Rulin's eyes widened. Aren't you too? She realized her comment was inappropriate and quickly shifted her words. But that was prepared by your mother. Right, right. I cheerfully agreed, pulling my arm out of Jiangji's embrace, only to have him grasp it again. His dark eyes locked onto me without blinking. I met his gaze. After a moment, I chuckled lightly. Honey, wait till I change into a new gown for you to see. The air went silent for 2 seconds before he released my hand. I followed Ji Rulin upstairs where she opened a lounge room and walked in, first handing me a glass of water, then opening a wardrobe, a white long dress. I stood there, my eyes fixated on the white dress. It was identical to the one my mother wore when she committed suicide. My stepmother moved in 3 years after my mother's death, when I was only 7. I don't remember much from my childhood. But the most vivid memory was waking up from a nap to find my mother lying silently beside me. She wore a pristine white dress and half a bottle of sleeping pills lay empty on the bedside table. She left no suicide note, and her behavior had been normal before her death. But every night after finishing a bedtime story, she would always add one line, Zizi, Mommy will always love you. So there was this layer too. In my previous life, the Ji family also plotted against me at this banquet by sending just an ordinary dress. It must be that things have been too calm at the Zhangs these days, and my stepmother couldn't keep her composure and wanted to stir up some disgust in me. Ji Rulin's words interrupted my whirlwind of thoughts, her eyes smiling. Do you like it? This dress is quite expensive. This was the dress my father had given to my mother on the day he proposed to her. I reached out and clenched the white dress. Why don't you try it on here, and I'll wait outside, she said, her steps light as she went out, thoughtfully closing the door behind her. I carefully felt the soft fabric of the dress in my hands. 10 seconds later, I closed the wardrobe and pushed open the decorative door designed to be hidden. This was something I had instructed to be made right after I came back to life, aligning with the timeline. The space behind the secret door was brightly lit, and as I stepped in, I could hear Ji Rulin humming happily through another door. I too smiled. Not until I had completely passed through the secret door and entered the hidden space did I see an unexpected person, Jiangji. He was dressed in a tailored silver-gray suit, lazily leaning on the sofa, his fingertips tapping sporadically on his thigh. He lifted his eyelids, saw me, and showed no surprise. Jiangji. I really didn't expect to see him here. How did he know I had a secret door built here? In my previous life, I fell into their trap and was later saved by Jiangji, but this life, I had already thought ahead and wouldn't fall into the same trap again, so how could he still know? However, Jiangji clearly didn't intend to explain. I pursed my lips, not calling me husband anymore, Jiangji teased. I choked a bit, then sat down on my own. A few minutes later, noises came from the room I was originally in. A gentle male voice faintly asked, Xiaoji, are you alright? Hearing this insincere voice made me feel sick. I took a deep breath, but then Jiangji grabbed my wrist and pulled me into his arms. I stiffened. What are you do? Before I could finish, his cool, dry palm covered my mouth. Lies. A warm breath grazed the back of my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. Next door, Ji Hao's voice changed from initial concern and confusion to cursing loudly. I forced myself to ignore Jiangji's actions and took out my phone to send a message to Ji Rulin from my other account. They can go in now. Ji Rulin immediately replied, okay, you'll get your money after this is done. The previous messages were from her, saying she was afraid of being exposed standing by the door for too long and had left, asking me to monitor the room in her place. What she didn't know was that the owner of this trusted account was the very person she was desperately trying to harm. She also didn't realize that her beloved brother had already taken my place, locked up in the room. After sending the message, I turned around. Jiangji was standing close to me, calmly observing me. There was no surprise or confusion in his expression. After a minute of silence, the sounds of doors opening and closing came from next door, followed by Ji Hao's cursing and screaming, and the panting of other men. The hunter becomes the hunted. Ji Hao had brought 3 men, hoping to ruin me, but now it was his turn to taste his own medicine. Feeling slightly better, I pinched Jiangji's earlobe and whispered, honey, the show has started. Jiangji steadied me by the waist, remembering that after today, we were supposed to sign the divorce papers tomorrow. I chuckled. After tomorrow, you might not see such an exciting show again, and you won't be my husband anymore. The hand around my waist tightened for a moment, causing me to groan in discomfort. He seemed to realize this and loosened his grip. The noise next door was harsh and unpleasant. I straightened my skirt, preparing to leave this hidden space. Jiangji followed behind me. I naturally stopped and took his hand. Jiangji let me lead him. Somehow, I had a premonition that this marriage might not end, but there wasn't time to ponder this now. Because after Jiangji and I left the hidden space and took a detour back to that sinful room, we found a crowd had already gathered outside, including reporters with cameras. Ji Rulin's eyes were red as she accused, "Sister, there's more than one man in this room, isn't there? How could you do this to your husband?" The crowd murmured in surprise. The so-called stepmother, who was supposed to be taking care of our father at home, stood aside in her elegant attire, touching the bracelet on her wrist. This shameful slut, Gigi, just like her mother. As soon as she finished speaking, I stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face, twice, without holding back. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, especially Ji Rulin, who widened her eyes in shock. Seeing Jiangji standing on the other side, her face gradually turned pale. Just then, the staff member Ji Rulin had called with the keys arrived, and the door to the room was opened. A foul stench filled the air as four entangled men were revealed. The stepmother, seeing the face of the man at the bottom, tortured beyond recognition, threw herself towards him without regard for her image, screaming, Howard. I patted Ji Rulin's shoulder mockingly. "Didn't you recognize your brother's voice?" Ji Rulin's cheeks flushed with anger as she raised her hand to slap me, but Jiangji intercepted it mid-air. Ji Rulin trembled, tears swirling in her eyes. "You ruined my brother. Don't rush to defend him," I said with a slight smile. "I've already reported your academic plagiarism and falsified lab results." And the arrival of the police interrupted Ji Rulin's panicked curses. As Ji Rulin was handcuffed, she struggled and screamed. "You and Ji Hao misappropriated company funds for personal use, cooked the books, and made the accountant take the fall. Did you really think you were flawless?" The stepmother shook her head in disbelief. I shrugged. "Your good days are over too. Both your children are locked away. Did you really expect my half-vegetative father to take care of you? Moreover, Jiang has been targeting the Ji family for a while now. They're desperate and out of options. Otherwise they wouldn't have come up with such a cruel and dramatic plan." I sighed softly. "Prepare to face hell for the rest of your lives. The Ji family is on the brink of bankruptcy, burdened with so much debt and enemies." The stepmother collapsed to the ground. "No, it can't be." I glanced at her expressionlessly and turned to leave. I knew Jiang was following me. When we were alone, I turned around. "I'm waiting for your divorce papers." Jiang smiled casually. He stepped closer, lowered his head, and his cool lips touched mine. I didn't resist, until my head spun a bit and I felt dizzy. "Wait, you." As my consciousness slowly returned, I struggled to open my eyes, letting the dim light flood into them. I felt utterly drained. When I fully came to, I saw that my hands and feet were shackled by chains. I moved slightly, and the crisp sound of metal clashing was particularly loud and harsh in the room. The door opened, and Jiang stood there, holding a bowl of porridge, looking down at me from above. I smiled, not questioning my predicament, but hinted, "Where's the divorce agreement? Don't think about leaving me." Jiang didn't answer directly, his lips curving slightly. My smile faded, and our eyes met. I had a sixth sense that he had regained his memories from a past life. "You must be crazy," I said. He walked over, placed the porridge by the bed, and didn't argue. You want a divorce, but I won't agree," I hummed, my eyes narrowing playfully. "So, you're playing a captivity game with me." Jiang didn't expect such a comment from me, his expression unchanging. "Don't think this will make me let my guard down." "Oh, what about our son? I will make sure he is well cared for." Perhaps this was the real Jiang. Underneath his lazy demeanor was a calm yet fanatic obsession. How had I not realized this in my previous life? I glanced at the porridge and then at him. "Well, you might as well feed me. I'm starving." Jiang ignored me. His cool fingertips touched my cheek, then slowly traced down to my collarbone. "Gigi." He sighed softly. "Yeah," I responded and locked eyes with him. His gaze as deep as the ocean yet as distant as the stars. "You'll never get rid of me." His voice was husky. "I can't get rid of you." I scoffed lightly. "It's you who can't leave me, right?" Jiang paused, his fingertips still. I leaned forward, arms wrapping around his neck, moving closer. "Some people die and their spouses follow them in death." Our eyes met. Just for a second, he looked away. He knew I had been reborn, and I knew he had too, but Jiang hadn't expected me to lift this veil of haze, having been reborn. "Shouldn't you have let go and set me free?" I narrowed my eyes. puzzled, shaking the chains on my wrists. After you died, I always regretted it, he said, eyes downcast, his fingertip pressing on the chain on my wrist. I should have confined you from the start. Was the agreement to divorce the day before yesterday just part of your plan to lock me away? I asked. Jiang didn't answer directly, his gaze lowered, letting me hold on to his neck. His tone was calm, devoid of his usual frivolity. He said, my birthday wish is to create a golden cage worthy of you. To keep you inside. It was an abrupt statement, but I understood it all too well. The first year after the birth of Jiang Qijiao, the year my relationship with Jiang completely deteriorated, the Jiang family was in constant turmoil because of me. Yet, on Jiang's birthday, I maintained basic decency. I gave him a piece of jade, indeed expensive but shaped more like a tombstone. If I were to use the servant's interpretation, it would be. Madame Jiang used this jade tombstone to commemorate her dead love with President Jiang. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking at the time, but I do remember casually asking Jiang, did you make a wish? Hopefully, it wasn't for me to disappear. It was quite a provocative statement. Jiang half closed his peach blossom eyes, and upon reopening them, he just looked deeply at me, saying nothing, feeling foolish. I left Jiang with the birthday cake that had only had its candles blown out and went upstairs alone, so that was his wish back then. I poked Jiang's cheek and chuckled. Congratulations, you got your wish. Perhaps, Jiang and I could never truly escape each other. After all, in my previous life after I died, my ashes still ended up in Jiang's embrace, but this time, it wasn't my ashes in his embrace, but the very real me. Side story 1. I've always felt that although Jiang always talks about keeping me locked up, it was always him who was trapped. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but I find it quite exhilarating. Then the divorce just fizzled out, and I regained my freedom. I was lounging on the bed with my legs crossed, happily binge-watching TV dramas. Jiang pushed the door open, his gaze landing on me. He walked in and covered me with a blanket. Shocked, I threw the blanket off, not seducing me. What's with this attitude? Jiang curved his lips, his gaze sweeping over my body from top to bottom. Clothed or not, I still want. I covered his mouth, flipped over and pushed him down on the bed. Jiang, wait, 2. Jiang and I had hardly ever fulfilled our responsibilities as parents, but one day we suddenly felt a pang of conscience. Jiang and I each held one of Jiang Qijiao's homework assignments. All three of us were somewhat silent, after a long inspection. We couldn't find a single error. Jiang Qijiao's handwriting was beautiful, and his problem-solving was clear. I touched my chin and honestly said, I was already failing math in 3rd grade. Jiang grandly handed Jiang Qijiao a black gold card. Buy whatever you want. Jiang Qijiao, me, he's only 8, what can he buy? Just as I was about to criticize Jiang, Jiang Qijiao took the card, walked over to me, and handed it to me. I looked at Jiang Qijiao. Jiang raised his eyebrows. Jiang Qijiao pursed his lips. Mom, buy a bag. I was stunned. That kid. Jiang chuckled. I looked at the family portrait on the table, Jiang Qijiao's neat homework on the left, the new watch I gave to Jiang on the right, and felt somewhat dazed. In my previous life, I thought happiness was hard to come by. This life, I've discovered, happiness is actually quite simple.